The yandere male protagonist flirts and pampers me. As the heir to medical expertise, Xu Qingwan finds herself transmigrated into a novel, becoming a female guard in the royal palace. She thought that completing the system's tasks and quickly following the plot would allow her to return to her original world. However, things take an unexpected turn. The prince, who was supposed to dote on the female lead with deep affection, starts teasing and spoiling her instead. The female lead, who was meant to fall for the prince at first sight, becomes like a sister to Xu Qingwan, sharing love and care. As Xu Qingwan, the personal female guard, completes task after task, she finds herself sinking deeper and deeper into danger. It seems like the yandere prince has her in his grasp. Chapter 1. The cold wind howled, and the night rain tapped against the window. Suddenly, several dark shadows leaped over their high walls and stealthily entered the Yunwang manor. Host, wake up. It's time to do their task. Xu Qingwan, who was sleeping soundly while hugging her pillow, was suddenly jolted awake by the system's voice. Annoyed, she threw the pillow on the floor and grumbled, "I was just about to enjoy some skewers. Can't you wait until I finish eating before calling me?" The system, now in the form of a handsome young man, picked up the pillow, dusted it off, and said urgently, "Can't wait. There are assassins. You need to hurry and save the prince." What? Assassins? Xu Qingwan tensed for a second, then relaxed and rolled her eyes at the system. Does he even need me to save him? Don't you know he's invincible? Who can kill him? The system replied, "Qingqing, in the plot at this moment, you're the one who, as the female guard, arrives just in time to save the male lead. So what? If I don't save him, he won't die anyway." Xu Qingwan was still thinking about the grilled skewers in her dream, imagining the sizzling meat. She couldn't help but smack her lips. The system warned, "Warning, if you don't follow the plot, you'll stay in this book forever and never get to eat fried chicken and beer or crispy grilled skewers." Fine. I'll save him." Xu Qingwan had no choice but to compromise. She sprang out of bed with a roll, grabbed her Qingfeng sword, and rushed out the door with elegance. Xu Qingwan had accidentally transmigrated into a book and was forcibly bound to a system. The system informed her that she had become a female guard in the Yunwang manor of the Shifan kingdom, responsible for protecting the regent Yunyi, who was also the male lead of the story. The prince, though disabled and weak, was portrayed as a delicate figure who wheezed with every few steps. As the female guard Xu Qingwan, she faithfully protected the prince, secretly harboring feelings for him. It wasn't until the final moment that she realized the prince had been pretending. He was actually an expert martial artist with 8-pack abs. In the end, the prince married his first love, the female lead, and the female guard died shielding him from an arrow. To return to her original world and indulge in grilled skewers and fried chicken, Xu Qingwan had to complete all the tasks assigned by the system. If she missed even one, she would have to stay in this book for another year. With her Qingfeng sword in hand, Xu Qingwan stormed into the prince's bedroom and saw the prince, seated in a wheelchair, cornered by assassins. 4 assassins, holding daggers, rushed toward him. He can still stay calm at this point. Doesn't he fear death? Waiting for me to save him, huh? Regent Yunyi, seeing her arrival, immediately relaxed, as though there was no need for him to act. But then he realized something strange. Had his female guard just reprimanded him? He hadn't seen her mouth move, so maybe he had misheard. The assassins, now aware that someone had arrived, grew even more aggressive, determined to kill him and claim the reward of 100,000 gold. The prince leaned back in his chair, calmly watching as the cold, glimmering daggers neared. Suddenly, a figure flashed, and Xu Qingwan appeared beside him, her sword slicing through the air. The assassins froze, their throats slit, and blood began to pour. Xu Qingwan knew the prince was a neat freak, so she refrained from throwing the bodies, letting the blood stain his clothes instead. This was the price she paid for being disturbed at night. You're almost dead, and still don't act. You're really good at pretending. You make me come out in the rain to save you and let their blood spill on your clothes. How disgusting. The prince, now fully aware, so that his female guard hadn't spoken. Did she harbor resentment and never want to protect him? Had he not given her enough monthly allowance? But the cleanliness-loving prince wasn't he going to let her have her way? With a flick of his hands, his wheelchair slid forward. The assassins collapsed one by one, with Xu Qingwan getting splashed in blood. At this moment, a group of guards entered, having been instructed by the prince to return to rest due to the heavy rain and not patrol. Upon hearing about the intruders, they rushed to the scene, only to see the assassins already dealt with. They all knelt and begged for forgiveness. "Your Highness, forgive us. We were late. Please punish us. Millimeter, clean this up, then each of you take 10 lashes." Yuni flicked his cuffs, wiping off the rainwater, which had stained from Xu Qingwan's clothes. Had she not rushed to save him, he might have thought she was intentionally making him uncomfortable. "You damn prince! Have you no conscience? You knew about the assassination and purposely sent the guards away. It was just a bit of rain. Now you want to punish them. I saved you, and now you want to punish me. Should we just let you fend for yourself?" Xu Qingwan scolded the prince, then turned and kneeled on the ground. In the original story, she had also been part of the group receiving lashes. Subordinate obeys the command. She followed the other guards and prepared to leave, but then she heard the prince's cold voice. "Xu Qingwan, stay." What? Had she misheard? This wasn't how the plot was supposed to go. She looked up and saw the prince staring at her with a playful expression. "System, come out here. What's going on? Why isn't he following the script?" The system replied, "Don't worry, this won't affect your return to the original world." Yuni frowned slightly. Who was she talking to? How did she know? He had deliberately left an opening for the assassins. Looks like this female guard isn't simple after all. In his eyes, she was only a servant, but now he realized she had some brains. The others quickly finished cleaning up and all left. Xu Qingwan remained kneeling on the ground, not daring to get up. "Why isn't he letting me up? I'm your savior, and you're being ungrateful." Yuni looked at the woman on the ground, her clothes soaked through. Her delicate, alluring curves looked different from usual. So, in her mind, she, who claimed to be his sister, was being so disrespectful. Did you notice anything from those assassins? This woman, he had saved her from a prince in a neighboring kingdom. Could she be an enemy spy? Replying to your highness, I didn't notice anything. Xu Qingwan kept her head bowed respectfully, her eyes fixed on the floor. You know full well that they were sent by the prime minister, don't play games with me. Yuni narrowed his eyes, intensely watching the woman kneeling before him. This woman knew too much. Why won't he let me leave? What does he want? It's so cold, my clothes are drenched, don't you see? He really doesn't understand how to cherish a lady. Heh. Yuni couldn't help but chuckle, observing her. Whatever your purpose is, you'll never deceive me. You have made a contribution in saving the princess' life. I will reward you with a hot spring bath. What? What did he just say? This wasn't part of the original plot. In the original story, it was just you and Xinlingyan enjoying the hot spring while I watched from the side. Chapter 2. Xinlingyan? Who is that? When did this prince ever bathe in a hot spring with anyone else? What exactly does Xu Qingwan know? Yuni cast a deep glance at her, then ordered, "Someone, come. Your servant is here." What orders does his highness have? Two maidservants entered from outside, knelt on the ground, lowered their heads, and dared not look around. Yuni coughed weakly, then said to the maidservants, "Go to the hot spring and attend to her bath." "Yes, your highness." The two maidservants stood up, still not daring to look at the prince, and came to Xu Qingwan, urging her to go first. She was cold and damp all over. If she could soak in a hot spring, it would definitely feel comfortable and prevent her from catching a cold. "Thank you, your highness." Xu Qingwan stood up and followed the maidservants out of the palace. The hot spring was located within Yuhua Palace, a bathhouse exclusively for the prince, never used by outsiders. Today, the female guard would bathe there, and the two maidservants were somewhat surprised. However, they didn't show it, only respectfully serving her. Xu Qingwan undressed and entered the hot spring pool. The smooth, warm water enveloped her skin, opening every pore. The warmth chased away the cold, leaving her feeling entirely refreshed. She couldn't help but close her eyes and leaned against the edge of the pool, enjoying the moment. At this time, the two maidservants, holding her wet clothes, left the poolside and quietly walked behind a screen. They didn't dare make a sound and saluted the prince behind the screen before placing the wet clothes on a nearby clothes rack. The prince waved his hand, and the maidservants hurriedly withdrew from Yuhua Palace. Once the room was empty, Yuni lifted his fan and began to inspect the wet clothes, turning them over one by one, but found nothing suspicious. It seemed the other side was very cautious, leaving no flaws at all. Clap. Yuni tossed the fan to the ground in frustration. It was wet and had picked up the scent of the woman's perfume. That was unacceptable. What was that sound? What are these two little maidservants doing? Xu Qingwan, still in the pool, was puzzled for a moment but then resumed enjoying the bath. After all, she wasn't carrying any silver, so it definitely wasn't hers. Click. Xu Qingwan was startled. She heard the sound of a wheelchair. She quickly turned her head, and a figure stepped out from behind the screen. It was Regent Yunyi. Damn it. No one told me the prince had this kind of fetish. The author never wrote about the regent spying on women while they bathe. He purposely gifted me the hot spring bath. Could it be that he is attracted to my looks and has improper thoughts about me? If he dares to force himself, I'll make sure he can't be a man anymore. Xu Qingwan, startled, quickly submerged her entire body in the water. Yunyi, hearing her thoughts, narrowed his eyes slightly. I don't have that kind of fetish. If I wanted to watch, I wouldn't have stayed this far away. But this woman, if she said trying to get close to me, shouldn't have this kind of attitude. Now is the perfect time to use seduction on me, yet she wants me to become impotent. Your Highness, I have urgent business to report. A guard's voice came from outside, and Xu Qingwan breathed a sigh of relief. Yunyi glanced at the edge of the pool, where only a small bit of her head was exposed, and quietly called for the person to come in. It was the two maidservants again, who came in to push him out. Outside, Yunyi's personal bodyguard, Lijian, a tall and sturdy man, immediately whispered a few words into the prince's ear when he saw him. Prepare the carriage. Yunyi's face changed slightly but soon returned to normal. He ordered Lijian, then lowered his head and fell into deep thought. Yes, Your Highness. I'll take care of it immediately. Lijian hurriedly left, and the two maidservants, with no orders from the prince, dared not move and stood respectfully by. Meanwhile, in the room just one door away, Xu Qingwan in the hot spring stared at a shadowy figure of a young man. When the system became a shadow, only she could see it. Why do I have to follow him? Just now, he was being a pervert, spying on me while I bathe. Now that I see him, I'm just so angry. The system, facing away from her, closed its eyes and whispered, Your task is to follow him into the palace and help him resolve this crisis. If you want to eat roasted kidney, a big cup of ice cream, or drink bubble tea. Stop. Fine, I'll do it. I'll complete the task. Xu Qingwan couldn't bear the torture anymore. The system kept mentioning her favorite foods, and each time it did, she swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Just as Yunyi was about to leave, the door to Yuhua Palace opened, and Xu Qingwan, now fully dressed, came out. She had changed into the new clothes the maidservants had prepared for her, a set of dark-colored, form-fitting attire, with arm protectors on the sleeves. Her long hair was tied up high, cascading down her back, looking both elegant and heroic. Your Highness, I request permission to accompany you. Xu Qingwan knelt on one knee, bowed, and showed deep respect. A cold wind blew in, and Yunyi coughed weakly for a while before regaining his breath. He fixed his gaze on Xu Qingwan, his voice weak as he asked, Do you know where I'm going? Damn it, I said the wrong thing. I can't let him know about the system, I can't let him know I know he is going to the Imperial Palace. Yunyi heard the word system again, and his gaze on Xu Qingwan grew deeper and more inscrutable. System. Could there be someone hidden in the shadows? What kind of method could it be, that even under his nose, it left no trace? No matter where the prince goes, I will always protect you, Your Highness. Although those assassins have been dealt with, I'm still concerned for your safety. Please allow me to stay by your side. Xu Qingwan, for the sake of the task, forced down her discomfort and sincerely pleaded. Fine. I allow you to be my personal guard, day and night, staying by my side. Yunyi emphasized the words, day and night. Everyone else thought Xu Qingwan was actively pursuing the prince, and he had agreed to her request. It seemed that she would go from being a guard to a bed companion. But no one knew if their weak prince could handle such a burden day and night. He has purposely been so ambiguous. He really is a pervert. A filthy pervert. Yunyi wasn't angry, though. He wanted to see what this woman was up to. He coughed weakly again and then ordered his men to prepare for their journey to the palace. At the palace late that night, the regent arrived without hindrance. Every palace gate opened for him, and the guards stood respectfully in his presence. Upon reaching the hall where the emperor meets his ministers, the chief eunuch greeted him warmly. Your Highness, you're finally here. Go inside and see. The emperor just had a fit of rage. The eunuch bent over and personally opened the door for Yun Yi, while Xu Qingwan pushed him inside. All of you, get out. Get out. Chapter 3. The emperor had his back to the palace door and did not see the visitor. Without looking, he swung his hand and threw a cup from the imperial desk. Xu Qingwan reacted quickly, pushing the prince aside. The cup smashed on the ground, breaking into pieces. Cough, cough, cough. Your servant greets your majesty. Prince Yun Yi, sitting in a wheelchair, slightly bent forward and lowered his head as a sign of respect. The emperor, enraged, saw that it was the prince, and immediately suppressed his anger. His expression softened somewhat, and he raised his hand to signal. Uncle, there is no need for such courtesy. How dare those servants disturb you? The prince glanced at Xu Qingwan, silently hinting for her to push him forward closer to the emperor, but noticed her eyes were wandering, not focused on him. Cough, cough. After 2 deliberate coughs, Xu Qingwan snapped back to attention and quickly pushed the wheelchair forward. I really have no reason to speak here. Why am I even here? Hearing her inner thoughts, the prince's gaze shifted slightly. Indeed, this female guard was following orders. But who was the person she was taking orders from? System, it's me, but unfortunately, you can't see me. You're in such a rage, Eunuch Xu must be terrified. What exactly happened? The prince looked at the emperor, who was slumped on the dragon throne. This nephew of his had only just turned 20, yet had been on the throne for 7 years already, ascending at the age of 13. The prince had been assisting him all along, and even now, the emperor was easily angered when something went wrong. The emperor took a deep breath, his eyes instantly red. He spoke with difficulty, my first son. They actually dared to harm my only son. Yandere. What happened to him? The prince was shocked. He hadn't expected anyone to target the young emperor's son. Yandere was the emperor's only child, the son of the empress. Who would dare harm him? But the prince, who was always calm and composed, only showed a bit of concern, with no other visible emotion. Yandere has been poisoned. Tears flooded the emperor's eyes, which he could no longer hold back. Is there an antidote? The prince frowned slightly. Although Yandere was not particularly close to him, he didn't want anything to happen to him. After all, he was the prince of Xifeng. The imperial physician is treating him. The emperor wiped away his tears and gritted his teeth, saying, I will find out who harmed my son. The prince's mind raced, and he glanced at Xu Qingwan from the corner of his eye. Could this be connected to her mysterious backer? Xu Qingwan's inner thoughts at that moment. The little emperor's crying is so heartbreaking, sigh, he is so pitiful. Look at that little puppy face, tear-streaked and delicate. I want to hug him. She actually felt sorry for the emperor. Could this have nothing to do with her? The prince withdrew his probing gaze, his face unchanged. Your Majesty, we have found the culprit who poisoned him. Eunuch Xu, the head eunuch outside the door, quickly stepped forward, bowing as he reported. Bring them in. The emperor's expression changed, and he sat upright, his dragon throne exuding the majesty of his imperial status. The guards brought in a palace maid. The maid appeared to be no older than 17 or 18, trembling as she knelt on the floor, her voice quivering with sobs. Your Majesty, please spare me. I was forced to do it, I will never dare again. Who forced you? The emperor's voice was filled with anger as he gripped the edge of the imperial desk. His hands were trembling with rage. Speak up honestly. The palace maid, trembling as if she were about to fall apart, replied, It was someone from the Yun family, from the prince's residence. They said if I didn't do this, the prince wouldn't spare my family. Your Majesty, please forgive me. What? She is directly accusing the prince of this. How bold. Is this what you meant by a crisis? Do you want me to solve this case? The system was silent, and Xu Qingwan was left to face the consequences alone. The people in the hall were shocked by the maid's confession, especially Eunuch Xu, whose expression shifted several times. He clenched his teeth, barely holding himself back from speaking. Such a clumsy accusation didn't the emperor see through it? The emperor froze for a moment. He had not expected this incident to be aimed at the regent, attempting to harm his son and frame the prince for it. Truly, a clever double-edged strategy. Bang! The young emperor slammed his fist on the table, causing everyone to kneel in fear. Xu Qingwan reluctantly followed suit. From above, the young emperor's voice echoed, "Uncle, I believe this matter has nothing to do with you. But those in your residence must be thoroughly investigated." The prince nodded, his expression still calm and unreadable. "I will get to the bottom of this and give your majesty an explanation." Just then, a figure rushed in. It was Zhang Taiyi, an elderly physician from the Imperial Medical Office. Trembling and teary-eyed, he fell to his knees and said, "Your Majesty, we are helpless. The Crown Prince, he is vomiting blood continuously. It's not looking good, Your Majesty, you must hurry." He had heard the woman's inner thoughts clearly just now. Why not test her with this? "Fine, if you have a solution, speak it out." The emperor stood by the bed, staring at the kneeling female attendant, seeing her as his last hope. "Your Majesty, if you take 1 or 2 ounces of the dragon's liver, grind it into a fine powder, then boil it with rootless water to extract the clear broth, and drink it, the vomiting of blood can be stopped." The head of the Imperial Medical Court, Dr. Zhang, was kneeling on the floor, trembling as he spoke. "Your Majesty, we still haven't figured out what poison the Crown Prince has been poisoned with. If we hastily use this prescription..." "Enough. If you have a method, use it, if not, then shut your mouths." The emperor roared, suppressing his fury, and ordered someone to immediately fetch the dragon's liver. Soon, the dragon's liver was brought in. The emperor handed it directly to Xu Qingwan, instructing her to prepare the medicine herself. After a flurry of activity, Xu Qingwan handed a bowl of slightly yellow broth to the palace maid serving the Crown Prince. "Feed it to him. Within a quarter of an hour, the vomiting of blood will stop. Hurry, hurry, give the medicine to the Crown Prince." The emperor rushed to the bedside, personally overseeing the palace maid feeding the medicine. Xu Qingwan silently stood beside the regent. The dragon's liver, also known as the heart of the furnace, was incredibly effective against internal bleeding, hemorrhaging, and vomiting blood. This was a rare ancient remedy from her previous world, and she never expected that the doctors in this world would not know about it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 23, 35. Xu Qingwan silently counted the time in her heart. While the prescription would work, she still felt a bit nervous. The regent looked at her with confusion. What was she doing? Why was she counting? This woman had been so unpredictable tonight. He had never paid much attention to her before, but now he was finding her quite interesting. After drinking the broth, the Crown Prince's vomiting of blood gradually lessened. Once the quarter-hour mark passed, it stopped completely. He's really not vomiting blood anymore. The Crown Prince is saved. The Empress, who had been watching anxiously, broke into a smile, her face filled with joy. She gently stroked the Crown Prince's face, a tear falling from her eye. The Crown Prince's face was still very pale due to blood loss, looking weak. He only managed to open his eyes to call out, "Mother," before slipping back into unconsciousness. The Emperor turned around, his face full of worry, and asked Xu Qingwan, "Why did he fall unconscious again? Is the poison cured?" Xu Qingwan kneeled again, respectfully lowering her head as she replied, "The Crown Prince was likely not poisoned. He probably ingested something that caused the vomiting of blood. As long as the vomiting of blood has stopped, there should be no danger to his life. Fainting is due to excessive blood loss. He still needs a remedy to replenish his blood. Unfortunately, I am not as familiar with this as the doctors of the Imperial Medical Court. I just helped save him, but I probably offended the Imperial Medical Court. I can't afford to draw too much attention to myself. Let them take credit for the blood replenishment." Xu Qingwan knew clearly that in order to complete her mission and return to her world, she needed to protect her life first, so she couldn't afford to make enemies. The regent, listening to her inner thoughts, couldn't help but take a closer look at her. This woman had saved the Crown Prince, which had helped him, but she was full of mysteries. Was she a friend or a foe? That still needed to be investigated. Dr. Zhang from the Imperial Medical Court glanced at Xu Qingwan, then immediately explained the medicine prescription to the Emperor, ordering someone to prepare it. "Your Majesty, your health is weak. You should return and rest," the Emperor said, walking over and adjusting the regent's cloak. If it weren't for the female attendant the regent had brought, he might have lost his beloved son today. Standing up, the Emperor looked at Xu Qingwan, who had been stealing glances at him, and said, "I never expected that you, a female attendant, would also understand medicine. You saved my son, and I must reward you. The little puppy is really on the right track. Hopefully, he rewards me with a box of gold. The more, the better. I can eat all the delicacies in the capital." The regent coughed lightly and deliberately spoke to the emperor. "As for the reward, I thank your majesty for your kindness." Xu Qingwan quickly thanked, her mind racing as she thought about the money. She had realized when she first arrived that the original body was poor, with barely any copper coins left. "As long as I thank him fast enough, the emperor won't be able to retract the reward." Both of them spoke at the same time, which caught the emperor by surprise. He laughed brightly and said, "What do you want as a reward? Just speak up." The regent looked at Xu Qingwan, wondering if she really wanted a box of gold. "I would only ask for a little silver, your majesty." Xu Qingwan smiled sweetly at the emperor. "Fine, I'll reward you with 100 taels of silver," the emperor said, a little surprised. She only asked for silver, and he was now looking at Xu Qingwan with new eyes. Swan Gonggong immediately ordered someone to bring the silver. After thanking the emperor, Xu Qingwan took the 100 taels of silver and helped the regent out of the palace. It began to rain heavily again outside. Xu Qingwan and the guards helped the regent into the carriage. She held the umbrella and carried the silver, walking alongside the carriage while pondering life's big questions. What should I eat for breakfast tomorrow? I now have silver. I wonder if things are expensive in the capital, and what kind of food there is. Will 100 taels be enough for a month's worth of food? Inside the carriage, the regent, listening to Xu Qingwan's thoughts, couldn't help but smile faintly. She wanted silver just to eat. It seemed he had been giving her too little in monthly allowances. He gently lifted the curtain of the carriage window and saw that Xu Qingwan's shoulder was getting drenched in the rain. She had moved the umbrella in front to protect the silver. That foolish woman, she wasn't afraid that the silver would get wet. "Xu Qingwan," the regent called out. Hearing his voice, Xu Qingwan immediately turned to look. The regent had already pulled back his hand, and the curtain was fluttering slightly, dampened by the rain, hiding the inside. "Your Majesty, I am here. Come up." Xu Qingwan frowned and blinked rapidly. "Did I hear that correctly? The regent is asking me to come into the carriage. Isn't he weak and fastidious about cleanliness, never getting close to anyone? This noble regent, could it be that he is interested in my 100 taels?" A faint smile tugged at the corners of the regent's lips. The female attendant who had accidentally saved his life was becoming more and more interesting. Xu Qingwan didn't dare to disobey and climbed into the carriage, trying to sit as far from the regent as possible. The regent didn't speak the whole way, as his ears were filled with Xu Qingwan's inner thoughts. He wasn't lonely at all. He told me to come up, yet he is closing his eyes to rest. Is he worried about assassins on their way and wants me to block the knife? But this regent is really handsome. His eyebrows are like distant mountains, his nose as bold as a hanging gull, and his lips full and smooth. Chapter 5. Such a beautiful face, what a pity. Xu Qingwan, don't be a face lover, don't like him, there's no chance for you. Alas, if it doesn't rain, we can go for a midnight snack. We have so much money, but we have to wait until tomorrow to spend it. Face lover. What is that? Why does she always talk about dogs? What a pity. Is she in love with me? When the prince thought of this, he suddenly felt a strange feeling in his heart, but it soon disappeared, and he continued to close his eyes and rest with an expressionless face. Ching, the mission is here. The voice of the system suddenly appeared in his mind. Xu Qingwan immediately glanced at the prince nervously and said to the system. What mission? System, granddaughter of the genius doctor, Xinlingyan has been kidnapped. Your mission is to rescue Xinlingyan. After the system said this, it was about to disappear, and Xu Qingwan shouted in her heart. Wait for me. Why did I save Xinlingyan? Shouldn't the original plot be that the prince rescued the beauty, and then Xinlingyan promised to marry him? System, now the mission asks you to rescue her. I advise you to hurry up. Xinlingyan will soon turn into the alley on the left. If you miss the opportunity and fail the mission, you will be punished. The punishment is to let her stay in the book world for 1 more year, and this year is equivalent to 10 years in the original world. I will save her. Xu Qingwan gritted her teeth and put down the silver in her hand reluctantly. She was struggling with how to tell the prince about this matter. When she looked up, she found that the prince was staring at her. There was no trace of weakness in her eyes. It was very deep and complicated. Who was she talking to? Why was she so sure about things that had not happened yet? Could she predict the future? Prince, I am a little hungry. Please allow me to buy some midnight snacks. After Xu Qingwan finished speaking, she secretly looked up at the prince. He couldn't tell the prince that I was going to rescue your future wife and asked him to let me go quickly, so he had to find an excuse. It's just right. I'm a little hungry too. The prince raised his lips slightly and said to the people outside, go to the street in front and find a store for a midnight snack. Is this man doing this on purpose? What should I do? The carriage is moving slowly. If I can't save people in time, the mission will fail. The prince raised his eyebrows, smiled playfully, and stared at Xu Qingwan, who was anxious in front of him. This prince has never known Xinlingyan. I want to see what you can do. Your Majesty, I'm in a hurry. Please forgive me. After Xu Qingwan finished speaking, she turned around and jumped off the carriage. After landing, she ran quickly and jumped onto the roof of the street in the blink of an eye. The dark figure, like a nightingale, swept down the roof and landed in the alley on the left. The prince in the carriage was stunned for a moment, lowered his head and laughed. She could even come up with such an excuse. It seems that this mission is very important and interesting. Go to the alley on the left, go faster. After receiving the prince's order, the driver whipped the horsewhip, the horse galloped up, and all the guards followed. As soon as the prince's carriage appeared at the entrance of the alley, a carriage appeared on the main road and turned into the alley on the left. In the alley late at night, there was only the sound of rain and splashes on the ground. Xu Qingwan stood in the middle of the alley with a long sword in hand. Before the people in the carriage saw Xu Qingwan, their horse neighed first. The two drivers all covered their faces, wore hats, and wore raincoats. The two felt the abnormality of their horse, looked forward carefully, and found the figure blocking the middle of the road, and immediately cursed. Blind things! Get out of the way! Swish! Xu Qingwan directly showed the Qingfeng sword. Without giving the two people a chance to react, she immediately flew up and killed them. The rain curtain was cut off by the Qingfeng sword, causing a splash of water. The original owner's martial arts value was like using a butcher knife to kill a chicken to deal with two petty thieves. In a few moves, Xu Qingwan knocked the two men to the ground. One of them had a cut on his arm and the other had a sword on his leg. Seeing that they could not win, the two immediately got up and ran away. Xu Qingwan lifted the car door curtain and saw a woman, with her hands and feet tied and a piece of cloth stuffed in her mouth, struggling in the car. Tilde. Xinlingyan looked at the person who came. She just heard the fight and knew that she was saved. Tears flowed from the corners of her eyes. Don't be afraid, I'm here to save you. Xu Qingwan did not dislike or resent the heroine at all, because in the original book, the heroine was an extremely good person. The granddaughter of the miracle doctor, who was well educated, gentle and lovely, had superb medical skills, and saved the world, was a character she liked very much. Her dislike for the prince was entirely because she was upset about her original owner. Xinlingyan, who was freed, bowed to Xu Qingwan gratefully. Thank you for saving me, lady. Don't call me lady, my name is Xu Qingwan. My daughter Xinlingyan, I will definitely repay Miss Xu for saving my life. Don't be so polite, you can call me Qingwan, Qingqing, it's all right. Xu Qingwan didn't dare to speak loudly to this gentle lady. She felt like she was meeting her idol, and at this moment she felt a little happy about chasing stars. The best heroine with gentle beauty and lovely personality is now in front of her, but she can't see the lady's face clearly. Xu Qingwan feels a little regretful. Qingqing, you can call me Yang. Xinlingyan felt that this lifesaver was very straightforward and she liked her very much. I'll take you home. After Xu Qingwan finished speaking, she fell into embarrassment. It was raining so hard, she didn't bring an umbrella, and she didn't know how to drive a carriage. How could she send her? Da. It was the prince's carriage, which was parked next to her carriage. The guard lifted the curtain, and the prince's voice came from inside. Guard Xu, you are my personal guard. Where do you want to go without my permission? He saw the scene of saving people just now. His clean and neat skills looked a bit cool. The splashes of water stirred by the Qingfeng sword caused a ripple in his calm heart. The curtain of the carriage where Xu Qingwan was also lifted by the guard. and he brought the light close to the window. The prince looked inside. Is that woman the Xinlingyan she mentioned? Never seen her before. Your Highness, Yandere is not safe alone, so I want to send her home. After Xu Qingwan finished speaking, the prince remained silent. She continued, but I can't drive a carriage, so please send someone to send Yandere home. Yandere? Do you know her? As far as he knew, Xu Qingwan didn't know anyone in the capital, and the people she knew were limited to the Yunwang mansion. We just met. Xu Qingwan answered respectfully, but she was complaining in her heart. What a slow move, whether to send her off or not. This is your future daughter-in-law, be careful not to abuse her for a while, but chase her to the crematorium. Future daughter-in-law? The prince, who was arranged to marry for no reason, coughed weakly again, and the guard who lifted the curtain quickly lowered the curtain to prevent their sick prince from being caught in the cold. Chapter 6. After coughing for a while, the prince's voice came out again. Get on my carriage. Xu Qingwan had no choice but to take Xinlingyan to the prince's carriage. My daughter Xinlingyan pays homage to the prince. Xinlingyan knew the rules very well, and bowed her head and saluted after entering the carriage. The prince just looked weak and nodded weakly. The heroine and the hero finally met, and the famous scene of love at first sight is here. Immersive CP, the elder sister is the first. Xu Qingwan's eyes turned back and forth between the two people. The more she looked, the more she felt that they were worthy of being the male and female protagonists, a perfect match. But the prince, who heard her inner voice, turned his eyes to her quietly. What male and female protagonists? Love at first sight. Are you talking about me and Xinlingyan? The prince took a look at Xinlingyan, who was gentle and dignified, and a good woman, but he was not interested. Xinlingyan sat quietly on the side. Seeing that the prince's eyes were always on Xu Qingwan, she couldn't help but look at Xu Qingwan. There was 3 points of heroism and 7 points of handsomeness between her eyebrows and eyes. She was upright, heroic and very chic. Such a woman, even she, who was also a woman, couldn't help but look at her a few more times. It was not surprising that she could get the favor of the prince. TSK, why is Xinlingyan's eyes always on me? She should have fallen in love with the prince at first sight when she saw him. Her eyes should be on the prince. Is the plot off track? The prince coughed and panted from time to time, and did not talk to Xinlingyan, which made Xu Qingwan grit her teeth in anxiety. Neither of you took the initiative. When can you get married? The plot is not like this. What went wrong? The prince lifted his eyelids and took a deep look at Xu Qingwan. Why did she want me and Xinlingyan to get married so much? What is her relationship with Xinlingyan? Prince, didn't you just say you were hungry? I'll buy you a midnight snack, and you can take Miss Xin home. Xu Qingwan asked very seriously. Maybe it was because she was here that Xinlingyan was shy and embarrassed to talk. The original plot was that Xinlingyan was alone with the prince, and the female guards were running outside the carriage, so she, the light bulb, had to evacuate quickly. The prince's weak face showed no emotion. He lowered his head and tidied his robes, and said lightly, "It's raining too hard outside, bear it, and let the kitchen cook when you go back to the mansion." Xu Qingwan had an illusion that the prince's words sounded like they were spoken to her. Thinking of the original owner, who was punished by the prince several times in the original book and could not get out of bed for several days, Xu Qingwan shut up obediently and dared not say anything more. The rain was rustling, and there was no other sound except the rumbling of the carriage. Soon, the carriage stopped in front of a house. The plaque on the door read, "Xin Mansion." "Prince, we have arrived at Xin Mansion." The guard outside the car, holding an umbrella, lifted the curtain of the car door. "Thank you, Prince, thank you, Miss Xu. I will repay you for your kindness today tomorrow, and I will take my leave first." Xinlingyan bowed gently and dignifiedly, bent down and walked out of the carriage. Xu Qingwan clung to the door and said goodbye reluctantly. "Miss Xin, we will meet again. Take care." The candlelight in the car illuminated Xu Qingwan's profile. Her long eyelashes curled and cast a shadow. Her relaxed and natural smile once again caused ripples in the prince's heart. Cough, cough, cough. The prince gasped and coughed again, as if he couldn't stand the damp cold. Xu Qingwan quickly retracted her hand, returned to the car, and lowered the curtain. The prince leaned back with satisfaction. Since she was his personal guard, he could only focus on him and pay attention to him at all times. Alas, this disease has to be pretended all the time. It's really not easy for the prince. Xu Qingwan's inner complaints made the prince pause. She knew I was pretending to be sick. How did she know? I know the people around me very well, but this woman is not under my control. This feeling is not good. It seems that I have to spend more time on this female guard. As the regent of Shifan country, he has the power of one person and 10,000 people, and he also bears the dangers and troubles that ordinary people cannot bear. He is the person at the center of the vortex, and the people around him have to be on guard. Now he thinks that the identity of the female guard in front of him, Xu Qingwan, is very suspicious. When they arrived at the Yunwang mansion, the rain had stopped. The guard helped the prince to the wheelchair and wanted to push him in, but heard the prince speak lightly. From now on, this matter will be handed over to Xu Qingwan. Li Jin, the personal guard who had been serving the prince, let go of his hand holding the wheelchair, glanced at Xu Qingwan, and then respectfully stepped aside. Yes, I obey your order. You obey your order. I don't want to, it's also tiring to push someone, okay. Xu Qingwan took the wheelchair reluctantly and pushed the prince inside. The prince was not surprised at all when he heard her voice. He had expected that she would not be willing. Arriving at the inner courtyard, the prince said calmly, "Go to the front hall. It was already late at night, and we should go to the bedroom to sleep." What was the purpose of going to the front hall? What was going on that had to be done in the middle of the night? Xu Qingwan wanted to go back to sleep. She was sleepy and tired, but she didn't dare to say much. She pushed the prince to the front hall in silence. When they arrived at the front hall, the maid came out and greeted him. The prince ordered, "Go to the kitchen and make some midnight snacks." Xu Qingwan's eyes lit up, and most of her sleepiness disappeared immediately. "I am indeed a little hungry, but I can't get the prince's midnight snack. Alas, how can I let the prince give me a midnight snack?" The prince listened to Xu Qingwan's voice and smiled secretly in his heart. The inner activities of this female guard were really interesting. The maid quickly brought the midnight snack up. The most high-end ingredients and the simplest cooking methods were just a simple porridge and a few side dishes, which exuded an attractive aroma. Xu Qingwan secretly swallowed her saliva. This was too tempting for a foodie. The maid set the dishes for the prince, then stepped aside. The prince picked up the chopsticks, picked up a bite of food, and slowly put it into his mouth to eat. Alas, my life is miserable. I watch while others eat. I stand while others sit. It's not easy to be a personal guard. The prince almost bit his tongue. Does his female guard think this way every time he sees him eating? Gurgle. Xu Qingwan's stomach called out very inappropriately. Xu Qingwan held her breath in embarrassment and secretly raised her eyes to look. Don't let anyone hear her. It's too embarrassing. Fortunately, the prince didn't look back. The Prince Yuni had excellent hearing, and he heard it clearly. This meal was specially prepared for Xu Qingwan, and he just wanted to hear what she thought. If he continued to tease her, the female guard might resent him, so he put down his chopsticks and said lightly, "Xu Qingwan, come here." Xu Qingwan walked over silently and glanced at the midnight snack on the table. Although it was not as delicious as the fried chicken, beer and barbecue, it was also very tempting. Chapter 7. Xu Qingwan, I'm here. Prince, sit down and have a midnight snack. Prince's face was calm, and he still looked weak when he spoke and moved, but he looked at her with a playful look. In the original plot, the female guard was just a guard here with the prince, and had never eaten with the prince. What's going on now? Has the plot gone off track again? Just a guard, do you just want to be a guard in my Yunwang mansion? Prince looked at Xu Qingwan deeply, with some calculations hidden in his eyes. Thank you, Prince. Xu Qingwan hesitated for only a second, then sat opposite the prince, picked up the chopsticks and started eating. Maybe the prince didn't like eating alone, and it was an order, so she didn't dare to disobey. No matter what the reason, Xu Qingwan felt that there was nothing wrong with sitting down to eat. Xu Qingwan tasted every dish. This was much more delicious than the big pot dishes she had been eating since she came here. It was simply delicious in color, aroma, and shape, comparable to the delicacies of a 5-star chef. It's so delicious, so delicious, so delicious. While praising in her heart, she kept putting it into her mouth. The maids next to her were all stunned. The two maids didn't dare to speak, they looked at each other and were secretly surprised. The way the female guard ate was too unrefined. She ate with such big mouthfuls. Wasn't she afraid that the prince would dislike her? Just promoted to a personal guard by the prince, she sat at the same table with the prince for supper. What magical power did this female guard have? The prince on the side was also stunned. He had never seen a woman eat so boldly. She enjoyed eating very much, as if the food was something that should not be missed. The prince, who had never been interested in food, was aroused by the person in front of him. He thought for a moment, picked up the chopsticks again, and started eating. The food in his mouth seemed to have a soul, and suddenly the taste changed, as if it could make people happy. Xu Qingwan was eating happily. Seeing that the prince was still so elegant and gentle, she took a big mouthful of food and put it into her mouth, chewing and smiling at the prince. You are really wasting the food by eating like this. Delicious food should be eaten in big mouthfuls. It seems that this thing is very unpalatable. It may also be that the prince is a rich man, and he doesn't care about this kind of food. He should really let him taste the big pot dishes that the guards eat, so that he will know how lucky he is. Listening to the woman in front of him complaining in his heart, the prince swallowed the food in his mouth with difficulty, and a cunning flashed across his eyes. Guard Xu, don't you usually have enough to eat? Xu Qingwan swallowed the porridge in her mouth with a gulp, not understanding what the prince meant. Did she eat too much and he didn't have enough to eat? Reply to the prince, I'm full. Oh, do you want another bowl? The prince saw that the bowl in her hand was empty. No, I'm full. Xu Qingwan quickly put down the bowl and chopsticks, wiped her mouth, and stood up. Thank you for the reward, Your Highness. It's late at night, and I won't disturb you. She was even more sleepy after eating, and she had fought 2 battles tonight, so she was very tired and wanted to go back to sleep. This prince said that you have to guard this prince day and night, and sleep here tonight. The prince's starry eyes stared at the person in front of him, eager to hear her voice. Sleeping here? Don't you have any intentions towards me? No, my sister's innocence should be left to her future husband. Your Majesty, I am just a guard. Please ask me to go back and change my clothes, and then I will come to guard the door for you. When she rescued Xinlingyan just now, her clothes were wet, and now they stick to her body, making her feel uncomfortable and a little cold. Go and tidy up the bed in the outer room. Guard Xu will stay in the outer room tonight. The prince ordered the maid next to him, but his eyes were on Xu Qingwan, and he turned around. Since this woman didn't want to use the beauty trap, he wouldn't do anything to her. He just thought she was interesting and her identity was suspicious, so he wanted to keep her around to relieve boredom. Xu Qingwan frowned slightly and looked up at the prince. There is no way to avoid it tonight. Why doesn't this prince follow the plot? The prince didn't know what the plot she was talking about was, thinking that it might be their plan. How could he, the regent of Shifan country, be manipulated by others, let alone let them do what they wanted? If I say day and night, it means day and night. Guard Xu, do you have any objection? The prince's voice was cold and majestic. Even though he still looked sick, his words made people dare not disobey. The maid next to him didn't dare to breathe and went to make the bed silently. Xu Qingwan had to compromise, lowered her head to hide her dissatisfaction, and said respectfully, I have no objection, please rest early, Your Majesty. The prince nodded with satisfaction and watched Xu Qingwan go to the outer room. The personal maid came to change the prince's clothes and serve him to bed. Xu Qingwan in the outer room, behind the screen, changed into the clean underwear prepared by the maid, and then lay on the bed. This was the first time she left her bed after she came here. She couldn't sleep and stared at the ceiling. What went wrong? Why did the plot go astray? It's all the system's fault. It must be the task you assigned that changed the plot. The system did not dare to show its entity, so it could only transform into a virtual body, hanging by the bed, communicating with Xu Qingwan silently. How can you blame me? Do you want to follow the original plot and end up dying for him, but he doesn't remember you, and he and the heroine live together? Xu Qingwan shook her head. Although I don't want to, but the prince and the heroine are a pair. They are now completely deviated from the original plot. Can they still achieve a positive result? System, you don't have to worry about this, just complete the task. Yes, this is none of my business. I just need to complete my task and leave here as soon as possible. The regent lying on the bed, flipping through the book in his hand, not reading a word, staring at the pages, complex emotions surged in his eyes. What is her mission? Where is she going to leave here? Xu Qingwan, is it a conspiracy between you and the prince that I saved you and kept you in the palace? The prince suddenly felt a little tired, raised his hand to rub his eyebrows, closed the book, put it on the table beside him, and fell asleep quickly. Xu Qingwan finally fell asleep, and slept very deeply. In the morning, when the maid came to help the prince wash, she didn't get up. The maid looked at her with some ambiguous eyes. They all thought that Xu Shuwei had been in bed last night. Otherwise, how could a guard get up and she was still sleeping? The point is, the prince is not angry. Tell her to get up and follow me to court. The prince dressed neatly, ordered the maid, sat in the wheelchair, and looked at Xu Qingwan, who was sleeping soundly from a distance. As a guard, this level of alertness is not qualified at all. Chapter 8. As a spy, an eyeliner, sleeping so defenselessly is even more unqualified. This woman always surprises him. Xu Qingwan was very grumpy when she got up. She was about to lose her temper when she was woken up, but when she opened her eyes and saw the prince, she reacted. She slept at the prince's place last night. Although she was very annoyed, she didn't dare to delay at all. She jumped out of bed immediately and put on her clothes quickly. It's just Ju Ba Pi, worse than 996. Sister just saved you last night. You woke me up after sleeping for a while, you bastard. The prince is so great. Can the prince not let people sleep? The prince listened to the female guard scolding herself in her heart, but she was not angry at all. Instead, she found it very interesting. He held back his laughter and stared at Xu Qingwan, wanting to see what she would do. As a result, Xu Qingwan was very self-aware. How could she dare to disobey the prince's order? After putting on her clothes and washing up, she followed the prince to the court. Of course, she couldn't go in during the court, and could only wait outside the hall. The news that the female guard of Yunwang Mansion saved the eldest prince had spread in the palace. The eunuchs outside the hall secretly looked at her, which made Xu Qingwan feel a little uncomfortable. The young eunuch didn't dare to approach and talk, because he knew that the regent's rule was very strict, and his guards would definitely not chat with him. Xu Qingwan was really bored outside, so she could only look up at the sky and count how many birds flew by. His Royal Highness the eldest prince is here. Suddenly a shrill voice brought Xu Qingwan back to her senses. She looked in the direction of the voice and saw a child of 5 or 6 years old, surrounded by a group of palace servants, walking towards her. It was the eldest prince that day. At this moment, his face was ruddy and he could no longer see the sick look. Greetings to His Royal Highness the eldest prince. Xu Qingwan and other palace servants bowed and took a sneak peek. Judging from the child's complexion, he was already well. Get up. Although the eldest prince was small, he had the posture of an adult. He held the dignity of a prince in a proper manner. When everyone got up, he looked up at Xu Qingwan. You are the one who saved me. It was just a small effort, I dare not take credit for it. Your Highness looks so good, it must be the good treatment of the Imperial Hospital. When talking in the palace, you must always keep your IQ online, otherwise Xu Qingwan is afraid that she will not survive more than 3 episodes. You are my savior, I want to thank you. The eldest prince is a smart kid, blinking his big eyes, thinking for a while, and then continued. Father said that you like silver, but the grace of saving a life cannot be repaid with a few taels of silver. If you have any difficulties in the future, just come to me. The eldest prince patted his chest, full of momentum, and made Xu Qingwan laugh. Phut, okay, then thank you, Your Highness the eldest prince. The eldest prince rolled his eyes, feeling that this seemed a bit inappropriate, lowered his head and took off a jade pendant from his waist, and handed it forward with a pair of chubby hands. This is for you as a token of trust. If someone bullies you, take it out. Xu Qingwan was very surprised that he knew how to give a token of trust at such a young age. She was in a dilemma whether to accept it or not. Your Highness, this jade pendant is too valuable. I dare not take it. You should keep it for yourself. The prince was too young. Xu Qingwan felt that if she accepted it, she would be suspected of deceiving a child. The eldest prince liked the sister in front of him very much. Seeing that she did not want it, he said unhappily, No, do you dare not listen to this prince? Well, she used her status to pressure others. Xu Qingwan quickly bent down, took it with both hands, and thanked him with a smile. Thank you, Your Highness the first prince. The eunuch next to her did not stop her. It should not be a very important jade pendant. Xu Qingwan decided to accept it first. Okay, can you play with me now? The eldest prince blinked and finally showed a little bit of the mischievous look unique to children. The eunuch who was following him was a little embarrassed and tried to test him. Your Highness, you have been out for too long. The queen should be worried about you. Let's go back quickly. The eldest prince pouted a little unhappy and glared at the eunuch who was serving him. I just came out for a while. My mother won't worry. Your Highness, I will wait for the regent here. You should go back with the eunuch. Don't let the queen worry. I will play with your Highness when I have the chance in the future. Xu Qingwan squatted on the ground and smiled gently. She wanted to touch the head of this little baby, but she held back. Not everyone can touch the head of His Highness. The eldest prince was a little unhappy, pouting his mouth, and said pitifully, then remember to find me to play next time you enter the palace. The eldest prince was born with a handsome face, big eyes and double eyelids, a red mouth, and a round face with a little baby fat. He looked like a glutinous rice dumpling and wanted to be kissed. Xu Qingwan also liked him very much. She smiled and coaxed, okay, I'll remember it next time. The eldest prince looked back every step and followed the palace servant to leave. Xu Qingwan kept looking at the back of the little prince. This eldest prince in the book seems to have no intersection with me. It seems that the plot has completely collapsed, alas. Xu Qingwan sighed and felt quite sad. Before she could get her emotions ready, the voice of the system sounded in her mind. Emergency mission, go to the Shen family and rescue Shenlingyan. Shen family. What happened to Shenlingyan? System, go quickly, otherwise it will be too late. It was the first time that Xu Qingwan saw the system so impatient, and she didn't ask any more questions. She turned around and told the palace servant next to her to tell the regent that she had something to do and had to leave first, and then hurried out of the palace. The regent, who was attending the morning court in the hall, could still hear the voice of the female guard through a palace door. Suddenly, he heard her talking about the Shen family, and then there was no movement, and he couldn't help wondering. Why is it that Shenlingyan again? This is the palace. Could it be that the people who contacted her could come and go quietly? What method did she use to contact him? How could she not see any flaws? The emperor on the dragon throne felt very uncomfortable when he saw the regent lowering his head, looking weak, slightly pale, and coughing from time to time. Listening to the minister's attack on the regent, the emperor couldn't help but roared, okay. The emperor was angry, and several ministers who impeached the regent did not dare to speak. The emperor glared at them angrily, and his tone softened a little. You all blamed the emperor's uncle for this matter, but it was the emperor's uncle's female guard who saved the emperor's life. If the emperor's uncle wanted to harm the emperor, why would he do this? The ministers glanced at each other and said nothing. You don't believe in the emperor's uncle, but I do. The emperor's uncle will investigate this matter thoroughly. I will give you an explanation. The Queen Mother's brother, Prime Minister Li Heng, said, Your Majesty, even if the regent is unaware of this matter, he is also a member of his family. He is not strict in governing his subordinates and is not good at judging people. I think the regent is also responsible, right? Prime Minister Li Heng has always been in opposition to the regent. He is a member of the Queen Mother's faction. At this time, he seized the opportunity to come out and add insult to injury. The whole court of civil and military officials knew what was going on, and no one dared to speak out at this time. The emperor had a headache. He took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, The emperor's uncle said that he would investigate it thoroughly. Let the emperor's uncle investigate this matter. Don't discuss it anymore. The prime minister wanted to say something, but the emperor waved his hand, adjourn the court. The regent had not spoken all the time. He had said what he should say long ago. After adjourning the court, he was pushed out of the palace by the palace people without even a glance at Prime Minister Li Heng. Chapter 9. He knew exactly what Li Heng was thinking. He didn't want to argue with Li Heng now. He just wanted to know what his female guard was doing. After leaving the palace gate, there were only palace guards outside the gate, and there was no trace of the female guard. The prince looked at the eunuch beside him with a normal expression, and the young eunuch immediately stepped forward to reply. Your Highness, your female guard left a message for you, saying that she had left in advance because of an emergency. Oh, did she say where she was going? The prince looked up at the high palace wall. It seemed that the female guard was very disobedient. If she left his sight, she would find an opportunity to fly away. She didn't say where she was going. The young eunuch also felt strange. The female guard stood here and suddenly said that she had something important to do, but no one came to pass on the message. The prince remembered the voice he heard, the Shen family, Shenlingyan. He knew where the female guard was going. Li Jin, after leaving the palace, let's go to the Shen family first. Li Jin was still waiting on the left and right, so he pushed the prince away at this time. After leaving the palace, he got on the carriage and rushed all the way to the Shen family. At this moment, Xu Qingwan was standing in front of the gate of the Shen family. Looking at the open gate of the Shen family, she couldn't help but frown and nervously clenched the Qingfeng sword in her hand. The gate of the Shen family was wide open, and it was a mess inside, as if it had just been robbed. Xu Qingwan walked into the door cautiously, turned around the screen wall, and saw a scene that made her scalp numb. There were two people lying in the middle of the road. Judging from the clothes they were wearing, they were servants of the mansion, both men. There was a pool of blood under them, which shocked Xu Qingwan. In broad daylight, in the capital, they dared to kill people. She suppressed the shock in her heart, walked over, squatted down to check, and both of them were dead. Such a ruthless attack made Xu Qingwan even more nervous. She tightened her grip on the Qingfeng sword and frantically called the system in her heart. "System, come out, what's going on?" The system did not show up, but only responded to Xu Qingwan with a voice. "It's what you saw. I can only tell you that Shen Lingyan is not dead. Go find her." Hearing this news, Xu Qingwan finally breathed a sigh of relief. She held the long sword and walked inside vigilantly. The scene inside was even more miserable. There was no one alive in the lobby. After entering the inner courtyard, there were many things scattered on the ground. Every house was turned over. Xu Qingwan carefully observed the surroundings. Except for the person lying on the ground, there was no one figure. Those who committed the crime should have left. But there was no trace of Shen Lingyan here, and she shouted nervously. "Shen Lingyan? Where are you?" "I'm Xu Qingwan." "Shen Lingyan, tell me where you are. I'm here to save you." She didn't dare to shout loudly, fearing that the criminals hadn't gone far and she would call them back. However, she shouted for a while, but there was no response. At this time, she had walked into a boudoir, which should be the bedroom of the women in the Shen family. The bronze mirror was thrown on the ground, the makeup box was also thrown on the ground, and the jewelry was scattered all over the ground. A plum blossom hairpin caught Xu Qingwan's attention, and she walked over to pick it up and took a closer look. Isn't this what Shen Lingyan wore on her head last night? This should be Shen Lingyan's bedroom. Xu Qingwan picked up the hairpin, put it in her arms, and carefully walked around the room. "Shen Lingyan? Shen Lingyan?" She shouted a few times, but got no response. There were not many places in the house where people could hide, and she searched everywhere. "It seems she's not here. Can't you tell me where she is?" Xu Qingwan frowned anxiously and summoned the system again. "System, I can't help you, Qingqing, don't blame me." Xu Qingwan gritted her teeth. "What's the use of you, just issuing tasks, you can't help at all. Wait for me to go back, I'll kick you out, I want to find a system that can give me cheats." "System, Qingqing, don't be angry, if you get angry, your body will be damaged and no one will replace you. Qingqing, don't be angry, you and I are a perfect match, don't think about untying in this life." Xu Qingwan automatically blocked the system's chattering. She walked out of the bedroom, and searched around in the yard again. Now she was like looking for a needle in a haystack, she had to search the Shen mansion alone, and couldn't miss any place. The system couldn't help, so Xu Qingwan didn't talk nonsense with him. She was thinking in her heart while searching. Looking at this scene, it is obvious that the criminals have already searched through it. They didn't take the valuables, so they are looking for something else. If Shen Lingyan is fine, she must have been captured or hidden. Moreover, the place where she is hiding must be very hidden, not in the room. The system asked her to come to rescue people and specifically came to Shen Mansion, which means that Shen Lingyan is still in Shen Mansion. Xu Qingwan walked around the yard, looking for a hidden place where she could hide. At this moment, the regent who arrived outside Shen Mansion, sitting in the carriage, finally heard Xu Qingwan's voice again across the high courtyard wall. The female guard's mind made him look at her with new eyes. When encountering things, she can analyze calmly, which is very rare. Li Jin, take someone in to take a look. The prince was not going to go down, and ordered the personal guards. He was very relieved that Li Jin was doing things. Li Jin took the order and took two people into the gate of Shen Mansion. The scene inside made them, several grown men, couldn't help but be shocked. "Be alert, see if there are any survivors, and find guard Xu as soon as possible." Li Jin gave an order, and the three of them separated. Xu Qingwan, who was standing in the middle of a courtyard, suddenly had an idea and said to herself, well. Oh, in the original plot, the Shen family was suddenly in trouble, and Mr. Shen hid Shen Lingyan in a dry well. The author only mentioned this plot in the book in a few words, so Xu Qingwan didn't remember it clearly. She saw a well in the courtyard and suddenly remembered it. There was a well on the east side of the courtyard, near the courtyard wall. The well mouth was sealed, and there was a dustpan on it, with herbs that had not yet dried in the dustpan. Obviously, this thing did not attract the attention of the criminals, and Xu Qingwan was happy. It must be this well. She took 3 or 2 steps over, put the dustpan on the ground, and then pushed the manhole cover. It couldn't be pushed. Xu Qingwan looked down and saw that the manhole cover was a round stone slab, 4 or 5 centimeters thick. She had underestimated the enemy just now and didn't use that much strength. This time she mustered all her strength. After all, she was a guard with extremely high martial arts skills. If she couldn't push this thing away, it would be too embarrassing for the original owner. Creaking. There was a sound of friction between the stone slab and the well mouth, and finally the stone slab was pushed. Bang! The stone slab fell to the ground, and the well mouth was completely exposed. Chapter 10. Xu Qingwan took a breath and leaned over the well mouth, supporting the edge of the well with both hands. In the dim light, she saw a figure squatting at the bottom of the well. Shen Lingyan. Shen Lingyan, who was at the bottom of the well, trembled all over. She started to be afraid when she heard the movement at the well mouth. It was a huge fear. She was hidden here by her grandfather. What she was holding in her arms was the most important thing of the Shen family. She must not be found by those evil people. She was hidden in the well, listening to the screams and chaotic footsteps outside, each of which seemed to hit her heart hard, forcing her to grit her teeth. But the great grief and fear made her cry out loud, and in order not to be discovered, she bit her arm hard. After a while, it was finally quiet outside. She squatted at the bottom of the well, tears kept flowing down her cheeks. She knew that she had no home, and her only relative, Grandpa, didn't know what happened. If Grandpa was still alive, he would definitely let her out. After waiting for a long time, she finally heard the movement again, but the footsteps didn't sound like Grandpa's. Did those criminals find her? What should I do? Even if I died, the things in my arms couldn't be taken by those people. Just when she was about to hide the things, she heard a familiar voice. Trembling and looking up, seeing the person with his back to the light at the well head, Shen Lingyan made a sound in disbelief. Yes, is it Qingqing? Xu Qingwan finally breathed a sigh of relief. She said to Shen Lingyan at the bottom of the well, "It's me, don't be afraid, I'll find something to pull you up. This is an abandoned dry well, so there is no rope." Xu Qingwan was about to find a rope, but before she turned around, Li Jin came from behind. "Guard Xu, do you need help?" Li Jin had no friendship with Xu Qingwan before, because Xu Qingwan was brought back by the prince from outside, and she was silent and taciturn, and she was also the only female guard in the Yunwan mansion. In order to avoid suspicion, Li Jin rarely contacted Xu Qingwan privately. Xu Qingwan was not so unfamiliar with Li Jin. Li Jin in the book is a very resolute and loyal guard, and he is also very good at martial arts. Although his role is not important, he is very likable, and Xu Qingwan has a good impression of him. Without hesitation, she said very naturally, "Find a rope and pull Miss Shen up." "Okay, wait a moment." Li Jin turned around and went to find a rope. The natural feeling of guard Xu, without a sense of distance, made him relax. "Qingqing, Qingqing." Shen Lingyan stood up and looked up at the person in the light. Although she couldn't see her features clearly and was facing the light, she felt very relieved. She trembled and hugged the things in her arms tightly, choking and calling twice. As the heroine in the book, Shen Lingyan's life experience is indeed a bit tragic. She experienced a huge change in her family and became alone. Then she met the prince. The two of them had a mutual understanding and finally got their reward after suffering. However, in the book, the suffering of Shen Lingyan's family was only mentioned briefly, without a detailed description. Now Xu Qingwan has seen it with her own eyes and experienced it personally. The shock made her feel more distressed for Shen Lingyan. She has been at the well head, not leaving, and comforted Shen Lingyan softly. "Don't be afraid, Yanga. I will rescue you." Li Jin quickly found a rope, and the two of them pulled Shen Lingyan out together. "Yanga, are you okay?" Xu Qingwan felt Shen Lingyan trembling, and checked her body with worry. She was relieved to confirm that she was not injured. Xunling Yan had not recovered yet, her eyes were red, and she shook her head at Xu Qingwan. I'm fine, where is my grandfather? Qingqing, have you seen him? Please save him. Xunling Yan was very afraid that her grandfather would get into trouble. She only had her grandfather as a relative. She was listening to their voices outside and praying that her grandfather would not get into trouble. But now, she saw the mess on the ground and the servants lying in the distance, and she had a bad premonition in her heart, and a panic and despair climbed into her heart. I want to find my grandfather, Qingqing, I want to find him. Xunling Yan shook off Xu Qingwan's hand and staggered out of the yard. Yanga, mission. Xu Qingwan understood very well the mood of experiencing a huge change. Seeing that Xunling Yan ignored her, she hurriedly followed. Li Jin did not speak, but followed cautiously. The prince asked him to come in, and the purpose was to find Guard Shu, so he had to follow Guard Shu. Xunling Yan ran to the study, but there was no one inside. The study was no longer the same as before, and was turned upside down. Grandpa! Xunling Yan shouted, turned around and ran out again. There was no one in the bedroom, no one in the front hall, and finally she went to the pharmacy. That was where Grandpa usually studied prescriptions. There were many medicinal materials in it, and you could smell the smell of herbs as soon as you got close. The door of the pharmacy was open, and the medicinal materials were scattered all over the floor. There was no one inside, only a pool of blood on the floor, not much, and it had dried up. Grandpa! Grandpa, where are you? Xunling Yan saw the pool of blood, and a deep fear rose in her heart. Grandpa should not be here. This was not Grandpa's blood, it must not be. Yanga, calm down. Grandpa is not here, maybe it means he is fine. Xunling Yan understood Xu Qingwan's words. She just saw those servants who were killed. If Grandpa was here, he would not be spared. Qingqing, did you see those evil people when you came? Where did they take my grandpa? Xunling Yan grabbed Xu Qingwan's arm in excitement. The person in front of her was her only support, like a drowning person, the last straw. Yanga, I understand your feelings, but you have to calm down now. As long as Grandpa is still alive, we can find him. Xu Qingwan's words calmed Xunling Yan down and her emotions gradually stabilized. Now, let's deal with the things here first. Xu Qingwan held Xunling Yan's hand, giving her some strength invisibly. Seeing that her other hand had been protecting something wrapped in cloth, she felt mixed emotions. That should be the Shen family's secret recipe, which records the various prescriptions that the Shen family has developed through generations of medical practice. In the book, the Shen family was tragically wiped out because of this secret recipe, because it contained a recipe for refining an elixir. It was said that this elixir could cure all kinds of poisons and prolong life. It could also increase martial arts practitioners' strength. You're right, Qingqing, thank you for coming to help me. Xunling Yan nodded slightly, swallowed the tears in her eyes, and her voice was a little choked. She unconsciously clenched the cloth bag in her hands. It was because of this thing that the Shen family was gone. No matter what, she had to protect the things left by her grandfather. Chapter 11. Li Jin also sympathized with Xunling Yan very much, but as a member of Prince Yun's mansion, he had to obey the prince in everything. He glanced at the two of them and said, Guard Shu, the prince is outside, why don't you report to the prince first? As a guard of Prince Yun's palace, no matter what he does, it is related to Prince Yun's palace. The prince has always disliked his subordinates causing trouble, and he dislikes his subordinates acting on their own. Since Guard Shu interfered in the affairs of the Shen residence, Li Jin felt that he had to tell the prince first. There are a lot of things to deal with here, especially those who were killed. It is not easy to deal with them, and Xunling Yan is not suitable to handle them personally now. She didn't know how long it would take her to handle this on her own, and she really needed help. The hero helps the heroine. This is the plot in the book and there is no point in using it. Xu Qingwan nodded and said, Okay, I'll go now. She turned her head and glanced at Xunling Yan. Xunling Yan was still in grief and looked distraught. It was not safe to leave her here alone. Xu Qingwan supported Xunling Yan and walked out of the Shen mansion together. The prince's carriage was standing by the wall not far from the gate. The horse was standing obediently with its head lowered. The prince in the carriage was lifting the door curtain with a folding fan and looking outside. His female guard finally came out. He felt a little bored after not hearing her voice for such a long time. Your Highness, Guard Shu has been found. The Shen mansion has encountered an accident, but no thieves have been found yet. Li Jin walked to the front of the carriage first, nodded respectfully and reported. The prince just nodded and looked up at his female guard. He didn't care about the affairs of the Shen mansion. Either the miracle doctor's reputation was too famous and brought him trouble, or he offended someone. In any case, it was nothing more than a struggle for interests. There were too many such things in the world. The regent, who had experienced many hardships, had become able to remain calm about such things. What he was really interested in was his female guard Xu Qingwan. She was able to arrive in time twice to save Shen Lingyan. What does this have to do with the Shen family? How did the person who contacted her secretly contact her? This is what he wanted to know most. Xu Qingwan didn't know what the prince was thinking. She was only worried about Shen Lingyan. She pulled Shen Lingyan over and said to the prince respectfully, "Prince, there is only Miss Shen left in the Shen mansion. Please send someone to help deal with the funeral affairs of the Shen mansion." There was still no emotion on the prince's face. He just glanced at Shen Lingyan, then stared at Xu Qingwan, and slowly said, "Li Jin, send someone to report to the government and let them handle it." "Yes, Your Highness." Li Jin immediately took the order and left. It was indeed right that she reported the incident to the police immediately after it happened. She was in a state of panic and, because she knew the original plot in the book, she had preconceived ideas, so she asked the prince for help. Although this man was too cold and directly pushed the blame to the government, his arrangement was reasonable. Xu Qingwan did not say anything else, but just stared at the prince secretly. The funeral arrangements have been made, and Miss Shen should also make some arrangements. Why doesn't the prince say anything? Shouldn't he show sympathy to Miss Shen, take her in, and then develop a relationship with her? The prince's eyes flashed with brilliance. He actually didn't know that his maid was so concerned about his marriage and secretly left the palace to save people just to help him find a marriage partner. He would never do what she wanted. "Xu Qingwan, you left without permission and neglected your duties. What crime should you be charged with?" The prince looked so calm and serious that people ignored the fact that he was a sickly person. Shen Lingyan, who was standing beside him, became nervous. It seems that guard Xu came to save her, but the prince didn't know. Was he going to punish her? She couldn't let guard Xu get punished. "No way, I saved your wife, and you want to punish me. Where is justice?" "Forget it, you don't know yet, this is your future princess, I won't bother with you." Xu Qingwan's anger was extinguished by herself. She said sternly, "My lord, this is an emergency. I asked my father-in-law to bring you a message." The prince's face was still cold and indifferent, but he was snorting in his heart. "Princess? When will it be your turn to make the decision on my affairs?" He was becoming increasingly unable to understand this female guard of his own. "You are my personal bodyguard. Instead of protecting me, you come out and meddle in my business. This is dereliction of duty. Whatever you do without my permission, you will be punished." As a prince, his authority cannot be challenged. Wrong is wrong, and rewards and punishments are clear. Moreover, this female guard knew too much and her identity was too suspicious, so he had to teach her a lesson. "Am I meddling in other people's business? When she becomes your princess, you will know how to thank me." Xu Qingwan rolled her eyes fiercely in her heart, suppressed her anger, and said coldly, "Yes, I know I was wrong, and I am willing to accept the punishment." Shen Lingyan felt very guilty for being punished for saving herself, and also felt sorry for Xu Qingwan. Although she was a little afraid of this cold-faced prince, she still plucked up her courage, knelt on the ground, and begged the prince for mercy. "Your Highness, guard Xu is my savior and the benefactor of the Shen family. If your Highness wants to punish her, Ling Yang is willing to take the punishment for her. Please, Your Majesty, spare guard Xu." Shen Lingyan had just experienced a huge change, and her expression was still panic-stricken and sad. At this moment, there were tears in the corners of her eyes, and she looked pitiful. Xu Qingwan was very touched by Shen Lingyan's action. Seeing her red eyes, Xu Qingwan felt a little distressed. Shen Lingyan was a weak young lady, and she could not bear the beating. Xu Qingwan naturally would not let her take it instead of herself. "Yang, you don't have to suffer for me. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its creditor. I was wrong, and I must be punished." Xu Qingwan glared at the prince with resentment, then quickly lowered her head. Although she was unhappy, she didn't dare let the prince see it. She was brave, not stupid. "HMPH, I'll keep this in mind for you. It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge." The prince turned a blind eye to Xu Qingwan's pitiful appearance and was unmoved. He felt a little strange when he heard Xu Qingwan's words, "Every wrong has its perpetrator, every debt has its creditor." After thinking about it, he knew what it meant. Guard Xu was making innuendos and holding a grudge in his heart, waiting to settle the score with him later. After glancing at Xu Qingwan, the prince fixed his gaze on Xu Qingwan, and said word by word in a slow tone, "I never thought that the helpless Guard Xu would have such a loving sister so soon." Why are you being so sarcastic, Your Majesty? What's the point of deliberately emphasizing the loneliness and helplessness, and the deep friendship and loyalty? This deep bond of love is only because I saved her. The prince's eyes flickered, and his guess was overturned once again. Could it be that Xu Qingwan and Xu Qingwan really don't know each other? But she saved people twice, and each time she said that it was her future princess. Isn't this the plan of her and the people behind the scenes? Chapter 12. The person who passed the message to her should be the one behind the scenes. If you want to know what their conspiracy is, you have to find out the person behind the scenes first. Since the other party had gone to great lengths to force a princess on him, he would cooperate with them in putting on a show. However, the choice of the princess could not be chosen according to their plan. The prince said calmly, "Since Miss Shen pleaded for you, considering your eagerness to save people, I will spare you the beating this time. Next time, if you dare to leave without permission again, I will not let you off easily." "Thank you, Your Highness." Xu Qingwan hurried to express her gratitude, fearing that if she was a step too late, the prince would regret it. "Thank you, Your Highness." Xu Qingwan breathed a sigh of relief, looked at Xu Qingwan and smiled. The government officials arrived soon. The bailiffs went in to deal with the scene, and the chief constable came over to ask Xu Qingwan some questions. Because the prince did not want to get involved in the matter, he drove the carriage aside early and sat in the carriage waiting at a distance. Xu Qingwan accompanied Xu Qingwan. When recalling what happened, Xu Qingwan choked up and cried several times. Xu Qingwan had been silently holding her shoulders and comforting her. The head of the police force asked, "When did it happen? Do you know those people?" Xu Qingwan, "Before dawn in the morning, someone suddenly broke in. I didn't know those people and I didn't see them." The head of the police station asked, "Are there any suspects? Why are they here?" Xu Qingwan hesitated for a moment. The thing in her arms could not be exposed. "No, the Shen family never makes enemies with others." The captain asked some more questions, but Xu Qingwan could not give any clues. "Okay, Miss Shen, we will investigate this matter as soon as possible. Please accept my condolences." The captain also felt a little sympathy for Xu Qingwan, but he had seen too many things like this, so he quickly went to deal with the matter without staying for long. "Yang, what are you going to do next?" Xu Qingwan took Xu Qingwan's hand and wiped away her tears with heartache. "I don't know. I just want to find my grandpa as soon as possible." Xu Qingwan took a deep breath. She tried to hold back her tears, but when she mentioned her grandpa, she couldn't help but burst out with tears. "Okay, we will find it, believe me." Xu Qingwan hugged Xu Qingwan and patted her back gently to comfort her. She knew that in the book, Dr. Shen was not dead, but just missing. However, the author did not explain where Dr. Shen was now, so she could not tell Xu Qingwan now and could only comfort her first. "Don't worry, I will help you. Right now, this place is not yet settled. You can't continue to live here alone. You should find a place to stay first." Xu Qingwan really wanted to tell her to live in the palace, because in the book it was the prince who saved Xu Qingwan and took her in. But now, the plot has gone completely off track. She was the one who saved the person, and thinking of how indifferent the prince was, she didn't dare to act on her own. The prince is so indifferent to Yang, will he take her in? Why can't things develop as planned? The prince sitting in the carriage heard these words, quickly closed the folding fan in his hand, narrowed his eyes slightly, and smiled. "Guard Xu, of course I won't follow the route you set for me. I want to see what conspiracy you have. Your Highness, we can no longer live in the Shen mansion. Miss Shen has nowhere to stay. Please help me think of a solution, Your Highness." Xu Qingwan pulled Xu Qingwan over, and the two stood beside the carriage. Xu Qingwan poked her head through the crack in the door and listened to the noise inside. Since she had led the plot astray, it was her responsibility to pull it back. "Help. If you want to send someone to Prince Yun's mansion, you should be sincere. This tone doesn't mean you are begging for help. The prince feels that his dignity has been challenged. No guard had ever caused him such trouble, and no one dared to ask him to do something in such a tone. There are many inns in the huge capital city. Miss Shen can take care of it herself. The prince spoke in a cold voice, opened the folding fan in his hand again, and looked down at the inscription on it. His fan is either used for fanning or for display and appreciation. Okay, you are really cold-hearted. You dare to treat your future princess like this. Don't regret it in the future. Xu Qingwan gritted her teeth and glanced at Xinlingyan. She looked so pitiful, but the prince didn't feel sorry at all. He was really heartless. The prince in the book was not like this. This probably proves the saying that when I love you, I treasure you like a treasure, but when I don't love you, you are a piece of broken glass. We can only blame the prince and Xinlingyan. There is no chemistry yet and no spark of love has been created. Take your time, I will definitely let you ignite the flame of love, you must give me the ending according to the plot. The prince held the folding fan in his hand, his eyes gleaming with brilliance. If you want to get someone around me, it would be easier if you use the beauty trap yourself. The fan in the prince's hand was halfway opened and then stopped moving. He seemed to be frozen. What am I thinking? If she uses the honey trap, will I fall for it? Am I expecting her to use the honey trap? Swish. Boom. The door curtain was lifted. Xu Qingwan jumped onto the carriage, squatted by the door, pulled out a very bright smile, and said to the prince, "Prince, do you have the silver?" The prince thought that the female guard came to ask for help from him, but he didn't expect that she would surprise him again. I was still making a solemn vow in my heart, but you gave up so easily. You changed your face so quickly. The usually taciturn female guard suddenly smiled at him, and her smile was as bright as peach blossoms in March, burning his eyes. It was as if a stone was thrown into the lake of the prince's heart. With a thud, microwaves slowly spread out. What do you want the silver for? The prince was a little curious. Lend me 10 taels of silver and I'll return it to you when I get back. Xu Qingwan stretched out her hand. Her fingers were long and slender, as dexterous and slender as a woman's, but because she had been practicing sword for many years, her joints were distinct and she looked very powerful. The prince's eyes involuntarily fell on that hand, and he said slowly, "Okay, Li Jin, give her 10 taels of silver." Li Jin outside the car agreed and took out a silver ingot from his purse, which was exactly 10 taels. Guard Xu, 10 taels. Thank you, your majesty. Xu Qingwan took the silver, jumped off the carriage, came to Xinlingyan, and stuffed the silver into her hands. Keep this silver for your use. I'll take you to find an inn. Don't worry, no matter what happens, you can come to me and the prince. Save people to the end, send Buddha to the west. Since the prince is so indifferent, the heroine will be protected by Xu Qingwan. Since the prince is not taking the initiative, let Xinlingyan take the initiative. It is easy for a woman to pursue a man. She doesn't believe that even if the heroine takes the initiative, she still can't win the prince. Qingqing, thank you, I will return it to you later. Chapter 13. Xinlingyan held the silver with a look of gratitude. Her Shen family had been practicing medicine for generations, and her grandfather was even known as a miracle doctor. The family was very wealthy. But she couldn't face it at the moment and didn't want to go in, so she could only accept Xu Qingwan's help. You're welcome. Wait a moment. I'll take you to an inn. After Xu Qingwan finished speaking, she turned back to the carriage and asked loudly, Your Majesty, I would like to help Miss Shen settle down first. Please allow me to leave for a while. Actually, this is good. This way I have a reason to come out. In the future, I can go out of the palace and take a good look around the capital city under the pretext of taking care of Xinlingyan. Otherwise, it would be too boring to follow this cold-faced prince every day. There are so many rules, and he would beat me with a stick at any time. I will take Yandere to have a nice meal later and comfort her. Otherwise, she will be sad all by herself, which is too pitiful. The prince opened and closed the folding fan in his hand. Guard Xu's wish is to give him one surprise after another. I thought that not letting Xinlingyan enter Prince Yun's mansion would disrupt Xu Qingwan's plan, but I didn't expect that it would play into her hands and become an excuse for her to escape from me and get rid of boredom. Humph, you wish. If you leave my side, I will be the one who is bored. Bang! After closing the folding fan, the prince raised his distant mountain-like eyebrows and said calmly, Since Guard Xu is so worried, let Miss Shen stay in Prince Yun's mansion for a while. The prince deliberately paused and observed Xu Qingwan's expression through the half-open door curtain. Then he said slowly, This will also make it easier for Guard Xu to take care of him, so he doesn't have to run outside. He spoke the last few words very slowly, emphasizing them intentionally. Xu Qingwan was shocked. Does the prince know what I am thinking? Why is his tone of voice so strange? It is a good thing that Xinlingyan has been allowed to live in the palace. This means that the plot is finally on the right track. If I finish the storyline sooner, I can leave here sooner. Yes, thank you, Your Majesty. Xu Qingwan clasped her fists and nodded, quickly thanking the prince, as if she was afraid that the prince would regret it, and pulled Xinlingyan into the carriage. The prince's brows slightly frowned on his unchanging face. Why is she so happy? What does it mean to leave early? Does she really not want to be with me? At this moment, the prince felt as if he had been fooled, and he felt quite unwilling. It seemed that Xu Qingwan was very happy whether Xinlingyan was allowed to live in the palace or not, but he was the only one who was fooled around. He could hear everything this woman was thinking, but he still couldn't guess what she was going to do. He felt like he had no control over her. Just like this woman, she was incompatible with the world he had lived in for many years. She was like an accident herself, and everything about her was beyond common sense. It also went beyond common sense for him. He had never heard other people's voices, but he could hear hers. The prince looked at Xu Qingwan with complicated eyes. Xinlingyan was a little nervous when she got into the carriage. She was very grateful to Xu Qingwan, but she also knew that the man in front of her must not be offended. This man is the regent of Shifan Kingdom. It is said that even the emperor has to give him some respect. He was able to take her in and help her report to the authorities and handle her funeral, which was a great favor to her. She bowed her head gently and thanked the prince for his kindness. Thank you for taking me in, Your Highness. I won't bother you for too long. I'll leave once I've sorted out my family affairs. The prince just nodded, hummed, and raised his hand to signal Xinlingyan to stand up. Xu Qingwan on the side rolled her eyes and complained in her heart. Still pretending to be cool, this is your future princess, can't you be nicer to her? When you fall in love with someone and you keep calling them by your side, you will definitely regret your indifference today. The prince's eyes wandered over Xu Qingwan, his eyes were unfathomable, and his handsome face showed no emotion. But in his heart he sneered at Xu Qingwan's thoughts. Humph, he is so persistent in making her my princess. Could it be that this guard Xu is the reincarnation of Yu Lao? The Shen family is a medical family. Although they have some reputation in the capital, it is probably exaggerated by the world. He has never paid attention to the Shen family. As the regent of Shifan Kingdom, how could his queen be a commoner? Even if the old man of the Shen family is known as a miracle doctor, it is of no use to him. His princess would most likely become a victim of the political struggle, and must be a noblewoman of equal status. This was the fate of all royal relatives, so he did not want to even look at any other woman. The regent's princess must be of equal status, otherwise she will be criticized by those in the court. Besides, now is not the time for him to do whatever he wants and indulge in romance. He has never thought about his marriage. Along the way, Xu Qingwan didn't dare to talk to Xinlingyan, for fear of disturbing the prince. Because the prince had been resting his eyes the whole way. After arriving at Prince Yun's mansion, the prince handed over the task of settling Xinlingyan to Xu Qingwan. He just wanted to see what other trouble his female guard would come up with. Xu Qingwan clearly remembered that in the book, when Xinlingyan first moved into Prince Yun's mansion, she lived in the courtyard next to the prince's, Tingyu Shushuan. At that time, the prince had a good impression of Xinlingyan, so he deliberately arranged her to be by his side so that he could take care of her and meet her more easily. Now, although it is not clear that the prince has any good feelings towards Xinlingyan, Xu Qingwan feels that it is better to follow the settings in the book. After all, she was anxious to return to her original world, where she could find the wonderful life she longed for. Your Majesty, how about letting Miss Shen live in Tingyu Pavilion? Xu Qingwan smiled brilliantly once again, because she felt that only when she smiled would the prince not reject her. I just borrowed some money and it was very useful. Don't hit a smiling person. To deal with the cold-blooded prince, use whatever tricks that work. I smile so sweetly, Your Majesty won't be disrespectful to me, right? Actually, you also want her to live here, right? The one who is near the water gets the moon first. Living close to you makes it easier for you to communicate with each other. The prince now wants to go against Xu Qingwan, he doesn't want her plan to succeed. He glanced at Xinlingyan, who immediately said, I can live anywhere. If there are any vacant servant rooms, I can live there too. If there are none, Qingqing, Guard Xu and I can live in the same room. She had just arrived at this huge Prince Yun's mansion and only knew Xu Qingwan, so she only felt at ease when she was with her. A cool breeze blew up a few strands of hair on the prince's temples. He immediately raised one hand, covered his mouth and began to cough. Xinlingyan hesitated for a moment and said, "Your Highness, your cough is so serious. Perhaps you can try my grandfather's prescription. I am not very knowledgeable and have not yet received my grandfather's true teachings. I dare not diagnose you, Your Highness." Chapter 14. But I can write down the prescription that my grandfather researched for you. It has no side effects. You can try it. Xu Qingwan really wanted to tell Xinlingyan that she was deceived, that the prince was just pretending, that he was not sick at all, that he was not weak at all, that he even had 8-pack abdominal muscles, and that he was super strong and super A. In the book, after Xinlingyan moved into the prince's mansion, the prince helped her find the murderer and her grandfather. In order to repay his kindness, she studied medicine prescriptions every day and treated the prince, vowing to cure his chronic illness. Taking advantage of the opportunity of medical consultation, the two people became closer and closer. Now, the plot was on track, so Xu Qingwan held back. She said nothing, only complaining in her heart. Yes, that's it. Find an opportunity to be with the prince and become the princess as soon as possible. A happy ending. Then I will complete my mission and can go back. The prince listened to Xu Qingwan's thoughts and finally confirmed one thing. Guard Xu's mission is to make Xinlingyan the princess. Although I don't know what conspiracy is involved, how can a regent be controlled by others? He put down his hand from his mouth, slowly raised his eyes, and said in a low and cold voice, "No need, Miss Xin, my old illness will not be a problem. Miss Xin is a guest of Prince Yun's mansion. How can we let Miss Xin live in the servant's room? Since Miss Xin wants to live with Guard Xu, I'm sorry to inconvenience Miss Xin. In fact, there is only one difference between ordinary servants' rooms and guards' rooms. Guards live in single rooms, while servants live with several people." Xinlingyan breathed a sigh of relief and a smile appeared on her sad face, but it was fleeting. Now she is alone, and only Xu Qingwan, who saved her twice, makes her feel kind and at ease. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Xinlingyan thanked him, looked at Xu Qingwan with red eyes and a smile. "I will bother Qingqing from now on. What are you saying? I'm very happy that you live with me. You're just a good companion for me." Xu Qingwan felt sorry for Xinlingyan. She grabbed Xinlingyan's hand and squeezed it hard, wanting to give Xinlingyan some strength and comfort. "Don't be sad, I'm here with you. Don't worry, Grandpa Xin will definitely come back. Believe me. Well, you and the prince are both my benefactors. Ling Yang is grateful to you." Thinking of her grandfather, Xinlingyan's eyes became red again, and she tried hard to hold back the tears. Xu Qingwan couldn't bear to see her cry, and her own tears were about to come out. She held Xinlingyan's hand and comforted her softly. "Yanger, we will be good sisters from now on. Don't worry, I will help you find your grandfather. I will definitely find him. Besides, with the prince's help, we can definitely find the murderer, so don't be sad." Although the plot was set up so that it was the prince who took Xinlingyan in, comforted Xinlingyan, and helped her find the murderer and avenge her, Xu Qingwan had nothing to do with it at all. But now, Xu Qingwan couldn't bear to see Xinlingyan sad. "I will help you find your grandfather and stay with you. I don't want you to be grateful to me. When you become a princess, you can just cling to me. Then I will have someone to protect me when I stay in the palace." Humph, the prince snorted in his heart. When did he say that he would help take care of the Xin family's affairs? A mere guard dares to be my master. This Guard Xu is a little bit stupid. Instead of clinging to the princess, he would rather cling to me directly. "Princess, you still have to listen to me." The prince's mind turned, and the complex emotions in his eyes faded away, becoming unfathomable, and he looked at Xu Qingwan. "This king will offer you his thigh to hug, to see if you will hug him or not." Just as Xu Qingwan raised her hand to wipe Xinlingyan's tears, the prince's cold and indifferent voice rang out. "Come here, find a few people to help pack up Guard Xu's things and move them to Tingyu Pavilion. Take Miss Xin to Guard Xu's room and settle her down." "Yes, Your Majesty." The maid next to her immediately agreed and turned around to find someone to help. Xu Qingwan paused, let go of Xinlingyan's hand, turned around in disbelief and looked at the prince. The stiff expression on her face made the prince feel relieved. "Your Majesty, I am fine living there. Tingyu Pavilion is too big. It is not suitable for a guard like me to live there. Tingyu Shushuan is right next to the prince's bedroom, which is equivalent to a side hall. It is the second largest courtyard in Prince Yun's mansion. Except for the future princess, no one is qualified to live there. The prince raised his eyelids and looked at Xu Qingwan steadily. His voice was low and hoarse, with a hint of laziness. If the king says you are suitable, then you are suitable. Xu Qingwan was stunned, and her heroic eyebrows frowned twice. How come she could hear a hint of smile in the prince's voice, and why was there an ambiguous look in this man's eyes? Is this teasing her? Xinlingyan, who was standing next to them, looked between the two of them. She felt that the relationship between the prince and Xu Qingwan was unusual. The guards and maids standing by were also a little surprised, but with the precedent of being granted a bath in the hot spring pool, they were able to remain calm and not look away. If Guard Xu feels that living in Tingyu Pavilion is unfair, then he can only live in my bedroom. There was a smile in the prince's voice, which was hoarse and lazy but also had a hint of sexiness, and there was a bit of frivolity in his tone. His thin lips were slightly parted, his eyes were rippling, and he just looked at Xu Qingwan steadily. Oh my god, this man's voice, this expression, this face, how come he is so seductive? It turns out that being handsome is invincible. Even threatening people is so charming. No, Xu Qingwan, don't be a face chaser. Don't be fooled by him. The prince felt relieved, as the female guard finally understood his charm. But he gave Xu Qingwan the opportunity to get close to him, so how could it become a threat? Your Majesty, I don't feel wronged, not at all, but I really can't live in Tingyu Pavilion. It's against the rules, and my status is not suitable. Xu Qingwan bent down and nodded, almost kneeling down to the prince, her face full of fear. If she lived in Tingyu Shushuan, she would become a thorn in the palace's side. If I live in Tingyu Pavilion, how will the other guards see me? What will the future princess think of me? I still want to cling to her, but I can't let Yanga misunderstand me. I absolutely can't agree. The point is, the plot that has been brought back with great difficulty cannot go off track again. I didn't expect that even though I was so proactive in trying to curry favor with someone and showed such obvious preference for him, this woman was actually so ignorant of the situation. It's definitely not that he is not charming enough, it's that this woman has a conspiracy and she is always thinking about her mission. I can only blame the person who controls her behind the scenes. His methods are too sophisticated. Even though she is clearly attracted to me, she still has to restrain herself. System, I feel wronged, but I dare not speak. Chapter 15. The prince lowered his head and gently closed his eyes to hide the emotions in his eyes. He raised his head with a faint smile, his voice so low that it seemed like a whisper. Guard Xu, do you want a suitable identity? What identity do you think is suitable? The prince suddenly slid his wheelchair in front of Xu Qingwan. His knees were pressed against Xu Qingwan, and he raised his head. His originally cold eyes were filled with passionate tenderness. Xu Qingwan felt as if a March breeze had brushed across her face. The wind carried the scent of flowers, filling her breath and moistening her heart. She was bewitched by the prince's voice. The guards and maids nearby all lowered their heads, not looking or listening to anything inappropriate. They could only be surprised in their hearts when the prince suddenly became like this. I was shocked but didn't dare show it on my face. Xinlingyan also felt that the atmosphere was a little ambiguous. She pulled herself out of her sadness and was stunned for a moment. It was not appropriate for her to be here. Her affairs had already caused a lot of trouble for Xu Qingwan and the prince. She couldn't add more trouble at this time. She quietly took a few steps back, turned around and walked forward, trying to find a place to be quiet. Looking at the face that was suddenly so close to her, Xu Qingwan's heart was pounding and she was a little confused. Oh mom, he flirted with me. He is so handsome. He looks so sexy and charming. This is the atmosphere of a damn Mary Sue idol drama. Shouldn't we just awkwardly save up for a 3-bedroom apartment? Why do I want to say, sister loves me so much? Sister can do it. No, this is not right, Xu Qingwan, wake up. The prince should go and comfort Xinlingyan, she is the heroine, the future princess. What's going on when you suddenly flirt with me? What do you mean, I think what identity is appropriate? Do you think you can make me a princess if I say the princess is appropriate? What a joke. Xu Qingwan, don't be fooled by this man's tricks. Such old-fashioned teasing techniques are too greasy. He is teasing you. He is a pervert. He has no male ethics. Xu Qingwan's heart was in turmoil, and the expression on her face kept changing, which made the prince in a good mood. Suddenly a gust of wind blew, and the hem of her dress was blown up and fluttered towards the prince's ears. She immediately came to her senses, took a deep breath, and calmed herself down. Xu Qingwan took a big step back, pulling away from the prince, then lowered her head, bowed and said, "Prince, I don't want any status. I am your guard and I will obey your arrangements. But the Shen family just encountered an accident. I'm afraid it's not safe for Miss Shen to live alone. It's better for me to accompany her." The prince looked at the person who instantly distanced himself from him, and his mood, which had just improved, became gloomy again. Say he is a pervert. Say he has no moral integrity. That's right, he did it on purpose, just wanting to tease her and see how she would react. But she was so eager to refuse that he felt very unhappy. Tingyu Shushuan in the Yun Palace is next to the main hall where he lives, and is where the future Princess Yun will live. Allowing a female guard to live here was a great favor, an honor that many women dreamed of, but this woman refused it so bluntly. The prince's gentle and affectionate eyes gradually became gloomy, and the spring breeze on his face faded. He spoke slowly in a cold voice, "But you are my personal bodyguard, how can you leave my side? You only have two choices, live in Tingyu Pavilion, or live in my bedroom." The prince deliberately emphasized the word closely, and said it in a very ambiguous and gloomy way. The other guards and maids present all unconsciously slowed down their breathing and dared not breathe. The prince is angry. They tried hard to reduce their presence, fearing that the prince's anger would affect them. It is such a great blessing to be able to live in Tingyu Pavilion. How could Guard Shu be so ignorant? The prince had never looked at any woman differently. He let Guard Shu live in Tingyu Pavilion, which was a sign of his favor to Guard Shu. But she refused so bluntly. It is such a blessing to be favored by the prince. Others would beg for it, but Guard Shu refused it. Some of the maids standing by were worried about Xu Qingwan, fearing that she would anger the prince and be punished. Others felt that she was ungrateful and were even jealous that she was favored by the prince. Shen Lingyan, who was about to leave, stopped when Xu Qingwan rejected the prince. Now hearing what the prince said, she was a little at a loss. How dare she, a guest staying overnight, snatch the prince's personal bodyguard? But seeing how eagerly Xu Qingwan refused, and how straightforwardly she refused, it seemed as if she really didn't like the prince. She was in a dilemma and didn't know how to start. At this moment of hesitation, the prince glanced at her and said, "Guard Shu, don't worry. We have so many guards with strong martial arts skills in the Yun Palace. They will definitely protect Miss Shen's safety." Xu Qingwan raised her head unwillingly and saw the prince's gloomy eyes. He is weird and changes his expression faster than turning the pages of a book. "Sure enough, your gentleness and affection just now were all fake. I will never be tempted by your poor acting again." Xu Qingwan gritted her teeth in hatred, regretting that she was useless. Her heart was beating fast because of the arousal she had just received, but she understood one thing. A wise man never suffers a loss in front of him. If she angers this man, she will suffer the consequences. "Yes, Your Majesty. I know I was wrong. I will do my duty faithfully and protect Your Majesty at all times. Subordinates, we will move to Tingyu Pavilion right away. You are absolutely not allowed to live in the prince's bedroom." Although they did not share the same bed and lived in the outer room, they were connected and there was not even a door. It was not good for her reputation for her to be alone in the same room with the prince all day long. She was also very worried. What if the prince wanted to do something one night and did that to her? Wouldn't that be a big loss for her? The prince's actions have already caused misunderstanding, and she must try her best to avoid suspicion. She didn't want to look at the prince's face right now, because even with a gloomy expression, he was so handsome that it made people's hearts beat wildly. After Xu Qingwan finished speaking, she turned around and left. Even after she walked out the door, her heart was still beating fast. Shen Lingyan followed her. She walked so fast that Shen Lingyan had to jog to keep up. It was inappropriate for a dignified lady from a noble family to run fast in the palace. Because of the etiquette education she received since childhood, Shen Lingyan reached out and grabbed Xu Qingwan's sleeve. "Qingqing, why are you in such a hurry? Walk slower, I can't catch up with you." Xu Qingwan had calmed down, but was still a little annoyed. As a new age woman who has read hundreds of romance novels and has seen all kinds of situations, I was actually seduced by such a simple trick. Now that she came to her senses, she felt that she had no future. Chapter 16. Then she should feel embarrassed about Mary Sue's teasing skills. Why is her heart beating so fast? Damn it, it's all because that dog prince is too handsome. It's great that you're handsome. I won't fall for that. Ever since Xu Qingwan left, the prince had been waiting to hear her thoughts. Now that he finally heard them, a faint smile appeared on the prince's gloomy face again. It is a smile that comes from a strategic plan and a determination to win. She is praising me for being handsome. It seems that my charm has already bewitched her, but she is still being stubborn. Humph, let us see how long you can resist. Xu Qingwan swore angrily in her heart, took a deep breath, and put all her useless thoughts behind her. He turned around and smiled at Xinlingyan. Yang, you can live here peacefully. I will help you with your problems. Don't worry. Seeing that she finally slowed down her pace, Xinlingyan let go of her hand. Qingqing, although we only met by chance, you saved me twice. I am really grateful to you. Actually, I shouldn't cause you any more trouble. Xinlingyan felt that perhaps Xu Qingwan's life in the palace was not easy, and she seemed to have caused her trouble. But she is a weak woman. What can she do without Xu Qingwan's help and the protection of the palace? I'm afraid it will be difficult for her to even save her own life. Yang, you don't have to worry about it. Any chivalrous man will help you. For those of us who practice martial arts, it is common for us to do good deeds. Xu Qingwan felt distressed when Xinlingyan was in so much pain and helpless and still felt guilty for causing trouble for herself. She really couldn't help but want to scold the author. Why did he torture Xinlingyan so much? Unfortunately, scolding was useless. She could only try her best to comfort Xinlingyan. But I have already caused trouble for you and the prince by living here. I cannot trouble you again with my grandfather's matter. I can do it myself. Xinlingyan looked a little sad. His originally handsome face was covered with a layer of melancholy, making him look pitiful. For her own safety, she had to temporarily live in the palace, but she didn't want to trouble Xu Qingwan with finding people and investigating the case. The prince didn't say he would help just now, and she was afraid that she would implicate Xu Qingwan. What can you do? You can only look for it by yourself, or ask the government for help. You know the officials, they are not handling this case. You have no one to back you up, so when will you be able to find Grandpa? If the prince had helped, it would be different. If the government knew that you were from Prince Yun's mansion, they would definitely investigate the case as soon as possible. After hearing Xu Qingwan's words, Xinlingyan's expression darkened, she became even more depressed, and her eyes became red again. She understood all the reasons Xu Qingwan said, but she was really not sure whether the prince would help. The prince was willing to take me in because of Xu Qingwan's kindness. However, this incident seemed to have caused trouble for Xu Qingwan, forcing her to move to Tingyushushuan, a place she didn't like living in. Xu Qingwan could understand Xinlingyan's mood at the moment very well. She was sad and helpless. She didn't want to implicate others, but she had no other choice. She felt a little sorry for Xinlingyan, so she put her arm around Xinlingyan's shoulders and gently soothed her, hoping to comfort her. Besides, I'm worried about you going out alone. What if you're seen by those evil people? Don't worry, the prince will definitely help you, and I will help you too. Just stay here and feel at ease. Thinking of those evil people, Xinlingyan lowered her head, and a few traces of hatred flashed in her slightly red eyes. Xu Qingwan was right. She had to ensure her own safety first and keep her life before she would have the chance to see her grandfather. It's not safe outside now. Maybe those criminals are looking for her everywhere. Staying in Prince Yun's mansion is the best choice. Xinlingyan raised her head and looked at Xu Qingwan with gratitude. She suppressed the sadness in her heart and forced a smile at the corner of her mouth. You and the prince, do you like the prince? Xu Qingwan was startled, and looked at Xinlingyan in confusion, and quickly shook her head and said, How could I possibly like him? How can you tell? I don't like him. Then, does the prince like you? Xinlingyan felt that Xu Qingwan and the prince were a good match, but it was a pity that Xu Qingwan didn't like the prince. Impossible, how could he like me? The prince should like a lady like you who is gentle, dignified, and kind-hearted. I'm a female guard, and I only know how to fight and kill all day long. I'm rough and rude, which is not his cup of tea. He won't like me. Xu Qingwan denied it without hesitation. Although she didn't know why the plot would go off track at any time, she could conclude that the prince didn't like her. According to the setting in the book, the prince likes the heroine, Xinlingyan. Moreover, in her eyes, the prince and Xinlingyan must be a couple, and she cannot break up the CP that she has been supporting to death. How can you say that about yourself? How are your hands rough? You have beautiful hands. You are good at martial arts, good-looking, and kind-hearted. Even I like you. A smile finally broke out on Xinling Yan's sad and haggard face. She gently took Xu Qingwan's hand, moved closer, and lowered her voice and said, "But when I look at the prince, the way he looks at you is very different. It seems that he is really interested in you." Xu Qingwan sighed and whispered mysteriously, "I'm telling you, the prince is the best at pretending. Everything you saw was fake. He must have some conspiracy. He didn't treat me like this before. I don't know what's wrong with him today." "Oh." Xinling Yan looked curious. What was the prince's attitude towards you before? Xu Qingwan had just come here not long ago. She had not experienced the previous events personally, so she could only talk about the plot in the book. She raised her head and thought for a while, then spoke. "In the past, the prince treated me the same as other guards. Apart from giving me a separate room to live in, all other treatments were the same as those of male guards. In his eyes, he treated me as a man. I fought with the male guards, ate the same food as the male guards, and even got the same amount of beatings as them. You said that in his eyes, I am just an ordinary guard. He doesn't even regard me as a woman. So, he won't like me." After hearing this, Xinling Yan was somewhat surprised and puzzled. She frowned and pondered, "That's really different from now. If the prince didn't treat you specially, why did he treat you like this today? He also said that you can live in his bedroom. Does that mean anyone can live there? If he only treats you as a guard, it won't be like this, right?" Chapter 17. Xu Qingwan curled her lips. "He might just want to play a trick on me, or he might be scared by the assassin and thinks that I can keep him safe by his side. You also said that I am good at martial arts. Yes, that must be the case. He must not want to expose his strength and is afraid that the assassin will come again, so he let me live closer. That must be the case." The prince, who had already returned to the study, paused while turning the pages of the book as he listened to the female guard's thoughts. This woman was indeed smart, but she only guessed part of it. In addition to wanting her to stop the assassin, the most important thing is to destroy her plan and find out who is behind her as soon as possible. Xinling Yan looked at Xu Qingwan seriously. She didn't see any annoyance on her face, but she still said apologetically, "Qingqing, it's all because of me that you have to move. How about I go and beg the prince to let you stay here? Forget it, it doesn't matter where you live. You don't have to worry about me, and don't ask him for help. Just live here well from now on. If you have any problems, just come to me." Xu Qingwan knew very well that the prince's decision could not be changed by just begging. If she angered him, given his fickle personality, she didn't know what he would do to her. At this moment, they had already arrived at Xu Qingwan's room. The furnishings inside were very simple, but very clean. There were only 2 pillows on the bed. Xinling Yan was slightly surprised. She stood at the door, looked around, relaxed temporarily, and walked over to sit on the chair. "Qingqing, how did you become the prince's guard?" Xu Qingwan walked to the table, poured a glass of water for Xinling Yan, and then said calmly, "The prince is my savior. At the beginning, I was hunted by the prince of Qianlang country, Murongxing, and it was the prince who appeared and saved me. In order to repay the favor, I stayed with the prince and became his guard. These are the plots in the book, and they had already happened before she came through." "I see. So Qingqing, you are from Qianlang country." Xinling Yan opened her big eyes like autumn water and looked carefully at Xu Qingwan in front of her. There was no trace of the characteristics of the Qianlang people on her face. The people of Qianlang are all rugged in appearance, and the men are all strong and sturdy. The women also have wide faces and thicker bones than the Westerners. Their facial features are not as delicate and pretty as those of the Westerners. They have a strong 3-dimensional sense, as if they were carved. But you don't look like one at all. You look more like one of us Shifeng people." Xinling Yan took a sip of tea and smiled slightly. Seeing Xinling Yan's smiling face, Xu Qingwan finally felt relieved. In order to prevent Xinling Yan from being immersed in sadness, she decided to talk to her more. She touched her face and said with a smile, "I am from Shifeng country. I was just born in the Qianlang country, but I look much better than the people of Qianlang country." Xu Qingwan deliberately winked at Xinling Yan, letting her appreciate her beauty. "Am I beautiful?" "Well, Qingqing is very beautiful, and she looks especially good when she smiles." Xinling Yan was amused by Xu Qingwan's antics. Although it was just a faint smile, it made her look even more lovable. Xu Qingwan couldn't help but sigh in her heart. This beauty is worthy of the heroine. Even a smile on her sad face is so lovable that even I am moved. The regent on the other side heard this, pondered for a moment, and then understood. Xu Qingwan, are you talking about Xinling Yan? Guard Xu is actually attracted to a woman. Is Xinling Yan more charming than me? At this time, a maid came in from outside, stood at the door, and said softly, Guard Xu, we are here to help pack up. Please give us your instructions, Guard Xu. Xu Qingwan put down the cup in her hand and looked around. She had very few things, except for clothes. The most valuable thing was the 100 taels of silver rewarded by the emperor. Don't bother you. I can do it myself. Go ahead and do your work. It was just some clothes, she could do it herself and didn't want to trouble anyone else. These maids are also very busy every day and have a lot of things to do. Xu Qingwan, who used to be a worker, knows well the hardships of working people. But these maids were following the orders of the prince, and they dared not disobey the prince's orders. The maid in charge smiled and said, You don't have to be polite, Guard Xu. The prince is anxious for you to move in. Since the maids refused to leave, Xu Qingwan had no choice but to let them come in to help. She packed her clothes and gave them to a maid to hold, and asked another maid to hold her rouge and powder. Then she herself carried the box containing 100 taels of silver and walked reluctantly towards Xu. Alas, the closer I am to the prince, the further away from freedom. The prince in the study heard Xu Qingwan's wailing in her heart clearly. He lowered his head and smiled, then continued to review the documents in his hands. After Xu Qingwan left, a maid brought new bedding and some daily necessities to Xinling Yan. Xinling Yan was living under someone else's roof and didn't want to trouble others too much, so she said politely, Thank you both very much, I can do it myself, sorry to bother you. From now on, she is no longer the eldest daughter. She can't be served by others like she was in the Shen family. This is the Prince Yun's mansion. Taking her in is already a great favor. She knows her limits and doesn't want to cause more trouble. The maid smiled gently and said softly, Miss Shen, you don't have to be polite. This is the prince's order. You are Guard Xu's friend and a distinguished guest of Prince Yun's mansion. We cannot neglect you. Just watch from the sidelines while we come. Guard Xu's friend is a distinguished guest of the palace. Xinling Yan was stunned for a moment by this sentence. She was moved again in her heart and her eyes became moist. She suppressed her emotions, looked calm, and said with a polite smile, Thank your prince for me. I'd better come with you. Xinling Yan immediately walked over and started packing up with the two maids. Both maids felt that Miss Shen was easy to get along with, very friendly, and even made the bed with them. She didn't have any heirs at all, so they couldn't help but feel a bit of a liking for her. On the other side, Xu Qingwan arrived at Xu and was stunned by the luxury inside. The space was several times larger than hers. All the furniture and furnishings were made of the finest wood, with exquisite workmanship and beautiful carvings. Even the paper on the windows was more translucent than that in her room. The large carved bed could accommodate 4 persons. The bed curtains were made of the finest gauze and brocade. The tassels of the bed curtains were adorned with red agate beads. A treasure rack by the wall is filled with all kinds of treasures, including jade carvings, agate, jadeite, and colored glaze. It is simply dazzling. This is not a side hall, this is simply the treasure house of Prince Yun's mansion. Chapter 18. How can such a side hall with no one living in it contain so many treasures and such luxurious decorations? It is really poverty that has limited my imagination. Today I have really opened my eyes. Xu Qingwan reached out and touched the treasure rack. There was not a trace of dust on it. It must be cleaned by someone every day. You have so many beautiful treasures. If you let me live here, Your Majesty, aren't you afraid that I will secretly sell them? Alas, but there are so many treasures, none of which are mine, so I can only feast my eyes on them. These must all belong to the future princess, Xinling Yan, you are so lucky. In the study room in the next yard, the prince, who was handling official business, pinched his eyebrows and couldn't help but move the corners of his mouth and smiled. Treasure Pavilion. If my huge Yunwine mansion only had these belongings, it would be too shabby. But I am very curious whether Guard Xu would really steal my treasure and sell it. Xu Qingwan took a fancy to an 8-treasure glass bowl. Not only was the carving beautiful, it was also crystal clear. When exposed to sunlight, it would emit colorful light. Xu Qingwan had no resistance to this kind of shiny, flashing thing. She held it carefully in the palm of her hand, staring at it with her bright eyes, looking at it carefully. "This is so beautiful." The maid at the side took a look and said with a smile, "The things here are all things that the prince likes very much. This 8-treasure glass bowl is a tribute from the Qianlang kingdom. It was specially awarded to our prince by the emperor. Normally, there are special people cleaning the place, and no one else is allowed to touch it. No one else is allowed to enter Xu without the prince's permission." Another maid put away her rouge and powder and said with a smile, "It can be seen that our prince is also very kind to guard Xu." Xu Qingwan's hand almost trembled and she dropped the 8 treasures colored glass bowl. Sure enough, in the eyes of others, the prince letting her live in Xu was a favor to her, but she really didn't need it. Xu Qingwan carefully placed the 8 treasures colored glass bowl back on the treasure shelf and glanced at the 2 maids. "How long have you been in Prince Yun's mansion? How do you know everything?" She had only been here for a short time and had not yet made any good friends. If she wanted to have a better life in Prince Yun's mansion and not be too bored, it was necessary for her to get along well with these maids. She also discovered that the maids in Prince Yun's mansion were all pretty and charming. Everyone loves beauty, and she liked these beautiful young ladies very much. The maid in charge placed the quilt on the bedside, then turned around and looked at Xu Qingwan with a polite and appropriate smile. "We are servants of Prince Yun's mansion. We have been in the palace since birth." Xu Qingwan's eyes lit up, she nodded, moved closer, and lowered her voice, "Then do you know the prince?" The 2 maids looked at each other and said nothing. Even if they knew, they dared not say it. As servants, they were not allowed to talk about their masters behind their backs. "Do you know why the prince asked me to live here?" Seeing Xu Qingwan's mysterious look, the 2 maids covered their mouths and laughed. "That's because the prince likes guard Xu." Xu Qingwan curled her lips. She understood what the 2 maids meant. In their eyes, the prince liked her and doted on her. And in their eyes, they may have already believed that she and the prince had already had this and that experience. In order to clear her name, she had to explain herself clearly. She shook her head mysteriously and said, "Let me tell you, it's not what you think." The 2 maids stared at her with curiosity. "How is that?" "An assassin broke into Prince Yun's mansion the day before yesterday. Did you know about this?" The 2 maids nodded, and Xu Qingwan continued, "It was me who showed up in time and saved the prince. The prince asked me to live next door to him so that I could protect him. Think about it, who would have thought that a guard could live in a side hall in Prince Yun's mansion? Your Majesty, this is to confuse the enemy." The 2 maids thought that what she said made sense and nodded. But they felt that something seemed wrong, but their little brains couldn't figure it out, so they nodded and said, "Oh, then the prince must trust Guard Xu very much. So let Guard Xu provide close protection." "Guard Xu, thank you for your hard work in protecting the prince. If you have any instructions in the future, just call us." At first the 2 maids thought that Guard Xu was difficult to approach and they had barely spoken to him before. Unexpectedly, Guard Xu was not as cold as he seemed. He treated them like a friend and had no airs at all. Now, they both think that Guard Xu is a very good person, and it would be good if he could become the princess of Prince Yun's mansion. No matter what, the prince is very special to Xu Qingwan now and openly lets her live in Xu. This is a kind of favor. If they are respectful and nice to Xu Qingwan, it will be good for their future. Don't be so polite. We are good sisters. Thank you for your help. I will clean up the rest myself. Xu Qingwan smiled. She never had the idea of being superior to others. She is equal to these maids, and she wants to strive to become good sisters with them. Based on her years of experience watching TV dramas and reading novels, she summed up a truth. If you want to walk a broad and steady path, you must treat everyone as brothers and sisters. Rely on your parents at home and rely on your friends outside. This sentence is very suitable and appropriate for her as a book traveler. The things had been put away. The 2 maids politely said goodbye to Xu Qingwan and went to report to the prince. Xu Qingwan walked around the room, looked at the treasure shelf, and then admired the painting on the screen. The painting was beautiful, but she didn't understand it, and the best she could say was, "Wow, it's a really good painting. The screen is too big, and there is nothing I can do except look and touch." She admired it for a moment, then turned and walked towards the bed. "This big bed is so comfortable and soft. I don't have to worry about it getting hurt this time." I can roll around as much as I want without worrying about falling to the ground. Xu Qingwan threw herself onto the bed with a look of enjoyment on her face, rolling around on it. In her original room, the bed was too small and too hard. She couldn't sleep well every night and always fell to the floor in the middle of the night. The system suddenly appeared, detecting that there was no one else around, and took shape. It stood beside the bed, looking at its host with disdain. Look at the way you sleep, even an 80,000 square meter bed wouldn't be big enough for you to roll around. Xu Qingwan ran her hands across the bed, feeling the silky touch of the brocade, and said in a very good mood, "You are envious, right? Have you ever slept in such a big bed?" The system rolled its eyes at her and said, "I am also a veteran in the system world. I have seen all kinds of situations. You should thank me for broadening your horizons. TSK, it's not like I begged you to let me come." Chapter 19. The system was speechless. He did force Xu Qingwan, but this was the fate between them, a special fate. Xu Qingwan rolled over in bed. She was really reluctant to get up. She didn't sleep well at night and got up so early. She was a little sleepy now. "Don't bother me, I want to take a nap." The system immediately became quiet. Seeing Xu Qingwan close her eyes, he tiptoed to the treasure shelf. Who wouldn't he like so many precious treasures? It was the first time for him to see them, and he could even touch them with his own hands. He is not interested in the materials of these things. What attracts him most is the craftsmanship. Alas, this kind of exquisite craftsmanship is really rare. If I can take this 8 treasure glass bowl back and give it to Guogua, she will definitely agree to be my girlfriend. Guogua is also a system, and her entity is a beautiful girl who likes fancy handicrafts, especially the long-lost handmade antique handicrafts. Where can I buy this kind of bowl? The system fell into deep thought. The prince in the study heard Xu Qingwan say in her heart that the bed was big and she wouldn't be afraid of falling to the ground, and he became curious about her sleeping posture. But it was daytime now, and he still had important matters to attend to. He rubbed his brows and said in a low voice, "Someone come." Lijian, who was guarding the door outside, opened the door and came in. He walked to a few steps away from the table, stood still, and respectfully bowed and said, "Your Majesty, I am here." "Go and call the butler Indiana." "Yes, Your Majesty, please wait a moment." Lijian turned around and went out, instructing the person next to him to call their housekeeper, while he continued to guard the door. The Prince Yun's mansion had just been attacked by an assassin, and the prince had to be accompanied by someone, so he had to protect the prince's safety at all times. In less than a cup of tea, the housekeeper hurried over. The butler was an old man in his 50s with some wrinkles on his face, but he was full of energy and his steps were agile. He nodded and greeted Lijian at the door. "My lord, the butler is here." Lijian informed the inside, and the housekeeper pushed the door open and went in. He stood in the middle of the floor, bent over with a smile on his face. "Greetings to the prince. You called me here because of something." The prince picked up the hot tea on the table, slowly opened the lid of the cup, blew on it, took a sip, and then slowly said, "There is something I don't trust others to do, so I need you to do it." The butler bent down even lower, with a smile on his face. "Your Majesty, just give me your orders. I will do my best." The prince placed the teacup in his hand on the table. He looked up at the old butler and spoke in a calm voice, which made the old butler tense. "Go check which of the servants in the palace has had private contact with the maids around the eldest prince." The old butler's slightly cloudy eyes moved around quickly, and he knew without asking that something bad had happened. The first rule for servants in the homes of princes and ministers is that they are not allowed to have private contact with people in the imperial palace. This is an iron rule. "Okay, don't worry, Your Majesty. I know what to do and will definitely find this person for you." The old butler narrowed his eyes slightly, frowned, and the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes deepened. "Okay, go ahead, and quickly." The prince raised his eyes and glanced at the butler. The butler understood what the prince meant at a glance. The prince had always trusted him, and the fact that this matter was entrusted to him showed that it was a very serious matter and could not be made public. "I will do it right away." After the butler said this, he turned and walked out the door, his steps a little faster than when he came in. The prince glanced at the old butler's back, lowered his head, picked up a wolf hair brush, spread out a piece of rice paper, and began to write. He was very confident in the old butler's work. The old butler was a household servant of Prince Yun's mansion and had been in the palace for decades. He didn't need to say much when he asked him to do something, the old butler knew how to do it. This matter cannot be publicized and should be handled as low-key and confidentially as possible. After a while, two big characters appeared on the paper, with the strokes as light as floating clouds and as agile as a startled dragon. The prince stopped writing and looked at the two big words on the paper. Variable. He had already expected the assassination attempt on the rainy night, and he knew that someone had been wanting to attack him for a long time. The eldest prince was poisoned, but it was beyond his expectations. What was even more unexpected was that the palace maid framed him in public. This was a variable he had not anticipated. However, he was not worried about this variable now, because this matter was not a big threat to him, and he could solve it completely. As long as he found the traitor, he could break the situation, but it might take some time. The prince placed the wolf hair brush on the brush holder, picked up the rice paper with both hands, and stared at the two words on which the ink had not yet dried. What appeared in his mind was Xu Qingwan's face. Guard Xu is his biggest variable. The woman whose life he saved and who was willing to be his bodyguard to repay him had always been unknown and well-behaved, and had never attracted his attention. Why on rainy nights, he could suddenly hear her inner voice. After listening to her inner thoughts, he developed a great interest in this woman. In the past 2 days, Guard Xu seemed to be omnipresent and was always on his mind. Maybe it's because I can always hear her thoughts. Thinking of this, the prince was suddenly stunned. He looked towards the east. The next yard was Xu. What was Xu Qingwan doing? It's been a while since I last heard her voice. Your Majesty. Li Jin, who was outside the door, knocked on the door and walked in. It's time for dinner. The prince had just returned from court and had not yet had breakfast. Now the kitchen had prepared the food and sent someone to serve it. He was indeed a little hungry and had almost finished his official business. He nodded to Li Jin and motioned for him to push him to go to eat. Li Jin pushed the prince out of the study, along the corridor, and soon arrived at the front hall, which was where the prince usually had his meals. The meal was already on the table, and the maids were standing by, waiting to serve the prince. Li Jin pushed the prince to the table and then stood behind him. The best distance for him to protect the prince was 5 or 6 steps away. As long as the prince did not give special instructions, he would stand at that distance. Your Highness, please enjoy your meal. The maid set the table for the prince and stood aside with a bow. The prince lowered his eyes. In front of him was a bowl of his favorite Wuchuan pheasant soup. If Xu Qingwan ate this bowl of the best soup in the world, what would her expression be? Thinking of her cheering with joy in her heart when she saw Ting Yuxuan's bed, the prince couldn't help but feel curious. His slender, bony jade fingers grasped the handle of the spoon and scooped up a mouthful of Wuchuan pheasant soup. His eyes, as deep as the sea, fell on this spoonful of the best soup in the world, and he said lightly, "Go and call Guard Xu." The maid who was serving the meal was a little surprised. The prince had just had a midnight snack with Guard Xu last night. Was he going to have dinner with Guard Xu again? Chapter 20. Although she was confused, the maid remained calm and winked at the maid standing beside her, indicating her to go and pass the message quickly. Yes, Your Majesty. I will go right away. The maid agreed and immediately hurried to Xu. After a while, they arrived at Xu. Guard Xu, the prince wants you to come over. The maid came to the bedroom door, but did not go in directly. Instead, she knocked on the door, stood at the door, and spoke loudly to the inside. Xu Qingwan was sleeping soundly inside. She became a little annoyed when she heard the knock on the door. She had a serious bad temper when waking up, and she couldn't change it even after traveling into the book. Who is it that's making so much noise? Xu Qingwan sat up in annoyance and rubbed her eyes. She didn't hear clearly what the person outside the door said. She only heard a knock on the door. The maid hurriedly said loudly, "Guard Xu, the prince wants you to go to the front hall." Prince? Why is this man always bothering me when he is not looking for his future princess? My sister hasn't gotten enough sleep yet. The prince, who had just taken a sip of pheasant soup next door, almost choked on his throat over these words. It's Xinling Yan again. She really always remembers her mission. Got it, wait a moment. Xu Qingwan sobered up a little and shouted to the door. She is now the prince's personal bodyguard and can only obey the prince's orders. Guard Xu, please hurry up, the prince is waiting. The maid raised her head and looked inside, but saw nothing. She then put her ear close to the door to listen for any movement inside. She knew the prince's temper very well. He hated waiting for people the most. If he waited for too long, he would be unhappy. Got it, I'll put on my clothes and go. Xu Qingwan was very reluctant, as she had not slept enough, but she could only suppress her bad temper and tidied herself up in front of the mirror, combing her messy hair and smoothing her clothes. Let's go. When Xu Qingwan opened the door, she was surprised to see the maid waiting for her. Guard Xu, let's hurry up. The maid was afraid of delaying the prince's meal. The prince's favorite fire spring pheasant soup would not taste good if it got cold. Xu Qingwan walked quickly in front, and the maid trotted behind. Just as the two of them reached the gate of Xu Qingwan came towards them, walking gracefully among the flowers and willows. Qingqing, where are you going? Xu glanced at the maid behind Xu Qingwan. She came to discuss something with Xu Qingwan, but seeing that Xu Qingwan was busy, she did not speak. It's the prince who called me, Yangere. Is there anything you want to talk to me about? Xu Qingwan observed Xinlingyan's face. She looked a little better than before, but her eyes were still a little red. Someone must have cried. I don't have anything to do. You go and do your work first. Xinlingyan smiled, made way, and prepared to go back first. Xu Qingwan stepped forward and held Xinlingyan's hand. If she is left alone, she will definitely cry again. And the expression on her face shows that something is wrong. She is probably anxious to find Dr. Shen. In the book, after the prince took in Xinlingyan, he immediately sent people to help find Dr. Shen, and also sent people to secretly search for the murderer and investigate the affairs of the Shen family. But now, there was no response from the prince, and Xu Qingwan was very confused. Is it because it wasn't the prince who saved Xinlingyan, so the love at first sight plot is gone? Since the hero and heroine missed the chance to fall in love at first sight, she would act as an assist and create a chance for them to be together. Yangere, come with me to see the prince. Xu Qingwan took Xinlingyan's hand and was about to move forward. The prince didn't call me, why should I go? If something happens, it would not be appropriate for me to go. Xinlingyan shook her head, glanced at the maid behind her, and wanted to pull back her hand. She knew that the prince had specially sent a maid to invite Xu Qingwan because there must be something important, and it would be impolite for her, an outsider, to follow. What's inappropriate about it? Aren't you going to treat the prince's cough? It's just right. When you go there later, you can treat the prince. Xu Qingwan didn't let go and pulled Xinlingyan forward 2 steps. There's no rush to diagnose the disease. In case the prince wants to see you for something, it's not appropriate for an outsider like me to do so. Clearly. Xinlingyan stopped and patted the hand that was clenching hers. Don't you want to find your grandfather quickly? Wait a minute, beg the prince to help you find him. Let's go, listen to me, I will help you beg the prince. Xu Qingwan pulled Xinlingyan forward. Xinlingyan couldn't resist her and was really anxious to find her grandfather, so she had to follow her to see the prince. The maid behind didn't dare to say anything and just followed behind. Guard Xu is now a favorite of the prince, and the prince is doting on him. As a servant, she cannot say anything about what the prince does. Xu Qingwan held Xinlingyan's hand all the way and refused to let go. They soon arrived at the main hall where the prince lived. When they arrived at the front hall, they walked in directly without any help. My daughter Lingyang pays respect to His Majesty. Your subordinate greets His Majesty. The two of them spoke at the same time. Xinlingyan saluted the prince gently, bent her legs slightly and squatted, with her hands folded at her sides. Xu Qingwan stood straight, clasped her hands neatly, nodded slightly, and bowed to the prince. The prince looked up at them, his face showing no emotion, and finally his eyes fell on Xu Qingwan. His guard Xu pulled Xinlingyan over again, but it was not surprising. Their purpose was to force Xinlingyan to him and make her his princess. But why do they think that I am willing to fall in love with Xinlingyan? The prince felt that Xu Qingwan and the people behind her were a little too conceited. Miss Shen, there's no need to be so polite. The prince's eyes moved around Xu Qingwan's face, and he continued with a slight smile. Miss Shen, are you used to living here? Xinlingyan was a little nervous at first, but when she saw the prince smiling and caring about her, she relaxed and said politely with a smile, "Thank you for your concern, Your Highness. I'm used to living here. I'm sorry for causing trouble to His Majesty. I feel a little sorry for that." Xu Qingwan, who was standing aside, stood straight, her eyes secretly moving between the two people. I finally know how to care about her. It was right to pull Xinlingyan over. It seems that this assist was very successful. You two must talk more and interact more, so that you can develop feelings. Hearing Xu Qingwan's thoughts, the prince's eyes flickered slightly. As he expected, Xu Qingwan deliberately pulled Xinlingyan in front of him. She wouldn't think that I had fallen into their trap and fallen for Xinlingyan, right? Miss Xin, you don't have to be polite. You are Guard Xu's sister with deep friendship and loyalty, and you are an honored guest of my Prince Yun's mansion. Live here peacefully. If you need anything, just tell the servants. Chapter 21. The prince deliberately spoke the words of deep love and friendship slowly and forcefully, his eyes fixed on Xu Qingwan's face, wanting to see her expression. Xu Qingwan did not disappoint the prince. Her eyes suddenly widened and she raised her eyelids to look at the prince. She found that the prince was staring at her, so she immediately looked away. Why do you want to emphasize that she is my sister? Are you doing this for my sake? I am just a guard, how can I be so worthy of this? The prince's smile deepened. He signaled towards Xinlingyan with his eyes and gave instructions to the people beside him. Give Miss Xin a seat. Miss Xin hasn't had her meal yet, sit down and eat together. Xinlingyan was a little nervous. She glanced at Xu Qingwan beside her and saw Xu Qingwan winking at her, motioning her to sit down. She turned around and smiled, thank you, Your Highness. Xinlingyan sat opposite the prince, but she turned back with some uneasiness and glanced at Xu Qingwan. Since she, the distinguished guest, had sat down, why was Xu Qingwan, who made her the distinguished guest, still standing? What exactly does the prince think of Xu Qingwan? Xu Qingwan didn't care at all, she was feeling very happy. The assist was successful. That's great, if you guys can accomplish your goal soon, I can go home. As expected, even a hero can be tempted by a beautiful woman. You are still won over by Xinlingyan's beauty. My grilled kidneys and beer, I am drooling just thinking about my sister. The prince's eyes were fixed on Xu Qingwan's face again. Her expression was so interesting. Especially what she was thinking made the prince couldn't help laughing. Could it be that this woman was in such a hurry to complete the task just to go home and eat some grilled kidneys and beer? It's really admirable that they are so deliberate and try so hard just to have a bite of food. The prince's eyes flickered as he stared at Xu Qingwan's greedy face. Do you think I'm bewitched by Xinlingyan's beauty? You're underestimating my determination. Guard Xu, you should also have dinner with us. The prince had a faint smile on his face, and his eyes, which were originally playful and amusing, were suddenly filled with tenderness as he looked into Xu Qingwan's eyes quietly. Thank you for your kindness, Your Highness. I'd better eat with the guards. You and Miss Xin can enjoy your meal slowly. Xu Qingwan was a little surprised, but when she thought about the last time the prince invited her to have supper together, she was not surprised anymore. Now she just wanted to leave here quickly and leave the space for the two of them. After she said this, she turned around to leave, but before she could take a step, the prince's voice rang out again. Xu Qingwan, come sit next to me. Although the prince's voice was flat and emotionless, everyone knew that he was angry. Xu Qingwan gritted her teeth and cursed in her heart. You dog man, why do you do this again? You're being so ambiguous, as if there's something going on between us. Do you really want to tarnish my innocence? She calmed down, turned around with a normal look, and said respectfully, Your Majesty, how can I, a mere guard, be qualified to sit beside you? I'd better go back and eat. The others lowered their heads and dared not speak, all of them were shocked at Guard Xu's performance. Can't Guard Xu see that the prince is angry? Guard Xu really doesn't know what's good for him by refusing the prince's favor. This is an opportunity that many people would love to have. Doesn't Guard Xu want to be a princess? Chapter 22. If you refuse the prince like this and anger him, you will definitely suffer the consequences. The prince heard Xu Qingwan's thoughts clearly. He was not angry even when he was called a scumbag, because he just wanted to make Xu Qingwan angry. He wanted to surprise her in every way. That's what makes it fun. Xu Qingwan, don't make me say it a second time. Come sit beside me and eat with me. The prince still had a faint smile on his face, but his voice was so cold that it made people feel inexplicably oppressive. A wise man never suffers a loss in front of him. How can a mere guard defeat the regent? From the sound of this, it seems that if she doesn't appreciate the courtesy, she will be beaten. Xu Qingwan tried hard to force a smile, raised her head and said to the prince, It is an honor for me to be given a banquet by the prince, so I will respectfully obey your command. Xu Qingwan walked to the table and sat down next to Xinlingyan naturally. She looked up at the prince and showed an extremely bright smile. Since my sister is smiling at you and trying to please you, please don't embarrass me. The prince was indeed stunned for a moment at Xu Qingwan's smile, but his eyes flashed slightly and then he spoke. Bring guard Xu's bowl and chopsticks. The maid next to her immediately walked over and took away the bowl and chopsticks in front of Xu Qingwan. These were the ones that the prince had placed opposite him when he asked them to add more bowls and chopsticks. The smile on Xu Qingwan's face froze and she stared blankly at the prince opposite her. What on earth are you trying to do? Do you want everyone in Prince Yun's mansion to misunderstand that I'm having an affair with you? Your future princess is watching here, why are you being so ambiguous? The prince looked at Xu Qingwan intently. Other women would have been eager to have an affair with him, but this woman rejected his kindness time and time again. In the eyes of others, what he did to her was pampering, but in her eyes it became a conspiracy. This woman was able to stay sober at all times, which was a blow to his charm. He didn't believe that he couldn't break this woman's loyalty to the man behind her and her persistence in her mission. Regent Yunyi felt that he had encountered a very interesting challenge and he liked challenges. Come here, if you linger any longer, this best soup will get cold. The prince's eyes, which were full of calculation, were suddenly filled with tenderness. An extremely gentle smile blossomed at the corners of his mouth, and he hooked his finger at Xu Qingwan. His tone was doting, as if he was coaxing a girlfriend who was having a bad temper. Li Jin, who was standing a few steps behind the prince, couldn't help but raise his eyes and secretly look at Xu Qingwan. How did this female guard suddenly catch the prince's eye? In the past, the prince always treated everyone equally. Xu Qingwan has always been like this, going on missions with them, eating together, the only difference is sleeping. Everything else is the same. The prince never paid any special attention to her. Could it be that because the assassination took place on a rainy night, Xu Qingwan was the first to arrive? The maid standing by couldn't help but secretly glance at Xu Qingwan. The prince never has any interest in women. Many women from aristocratic families want to get close to him, but he doesn't like any of them and never gives them any chance. Why is he so special to guard Xu now? Although guard Xu was very good looking and had great martial arts skills, she was just a guard with a low status and it was impossible for her to become the principal wife of Prince Yun's mansion. The prince not only granted her a bath in the hot springs, but also allowed her to live in Tingyu Pavilion. Now he even asked her to sit and dine with him. It was obvious that he had taken a liking to guard Xu. This was how he treated his woman. Chapter 23. Xinlingyan blinked her bright eyes. Anyone who saw her like this would think that the prince was interested in Xu Qingwan. Why did Xu Qingwan refuse to admit it? Was it true that she didn't like the prince as she said? Xu Qingwan's body was stiff, and she stared at the prince with eyes full of confusion. You bastard, you flirt with me again. Such a handsome face, smiling at you so affectionately, with a tone so doting and gentle, and a voice so damn sexy, who can resist this? What is this sudden doting and tenderness doing? Xinlingyan will definitely misunderstand again, and other people will definitely misunderstand as well. The prince was calm, like a 1,000-year-old fox, looking at the prey that was about to be hooked, his eyes becoming more and more charming. The originally weak and slightly sickly face was now so gentle that tears could drip from it, and those eyes were becoming more and more affectionate, as if one would drown in them if he looked at them one more time. He just looked at Xu Qingwan without blinking. I want to make others misunderstand, and make the people behind you misunderstand as well. Xinlingyan's beauty trap will not work on me. Only you are the beauty who can confuse me. Xu Qingwan's heart was pounding out of rhythm again at the prince's affectionate and gentle eyes. The feeling of the spring breeze blowing on her face and the peach blossoms blooming came over her heart again. Your Majesty. Xu Qingwan really didn't know what excuse to use to refuse. If she refused again, would the prince be angry? A beating with a stick would be very painful. But everyone has seen his doting look now. He won't beat me for rejecting him, right? That's too moody. With a turn of her eyes, Xu Qingwan bravely continued. I just slept in my clothes and sweated a lot. I haven't had time to change clothes yet. Don't you love cleanliness? You can't stand the smell of sweat. The emotion in the prince's eyes grew a little gloomy, but he concealed it without leaving a trace, and he still smiled gently. I told you to sit next to me, why are you talking so much nonsense? Come here. After dinner, I'll take you to the hot springs. Or do you want to bathe first? The tone was domineering yet gentle, and gentle yet doting. The last sentence had a hint of ambiguity, which made Xu Qingwan blush. The prince and Xu Qingwan are in a relationship where they can bathe together? Xu Qingwan recalled that the prince had peeped at her from behind the screen while she was taking a hot spring bath, and she couldn't help but grit her teeth. This time she glared at the prince with some annoyance. I want to take a hot spring bath with you. I want to take a hot spring bath with you anymore. Hearing Xu Qingwan's thoughts, the prince smiled even more seductively. He picked up the bowl prepared for Xu Qingwan and served a bowl of Wuchuan pheasant soup himself. After putting it on the table, he raised his hand with well-defined joints and long fingers and waved at Xu Qingwan. Come here, I just want you to taste this best soup in the world. There was really no way to refuse, so Xu Qingwan stood up and walked over slowly. She tried hard to calm down the mood that had just been aroused by the prince. It's better to sit next to the prince, so I don't have to sit opposite him. When I look up, I will see that handsome face and it will be hard not to see it. Try it now. When the prince saw her sitting next to him, he finally smiled triumphantly, but in the eyes of others, he looked even more gentle and doting. The maid next to her also served a bowl to Xu Qingwan. Xu Qingwan lowered her head and started eating, occasionally secretly glancing at the two people opposite her. Chapter 24. The best soup in the world is Wuchuan pheasant soup. Xu Qingwan took a spoon, stirred the bowl, and relaxed. It is also called porridge without rice. It is a very rare delicacy. Listening to Xu Qingwan speaking slowly, the prince was a little surprised. He didn't expect that Xu Qingwan actually knew about this secret banquet that only took place in the palace. His eyes flickered, and the prince said in a deep voice, "Have you ever tasted the best soup in the world in Qianlan country? If the royal family of Qianlan kingdom also knows this secret banquet, it means that there are people in Shifeng kingdom who are colluding with foreign countries. I haven't eaten it, I just know how to cook it." Xu Qingwan didn't know what the prince was thinking. She looked at the porridge in the bowl and confirmed that it was Wuchuan pheasant soup. She was also a little surprised. In her world, this is a lost famous dish that no one has ever eaten, and she has only heard about it from others. A blogger who likes to study ancient cuisine once posted the recipe of this famous dish and actually made it. So the only person who has eaten it is the blogger. Guardshu, have you ever been a cook? The prince did not hear Xu Qingwan's inner voice and teased with suspicion. No, my cooking skills can only be called dark cuisine, but I like all delicious things, so I heard others say that this is the best soup in the world. Xu Qingwan finally realized that she had said the wrong thing. If the prince asked her questions, she couldn't just say that she had read the blogger's popular science article, right? If she continued talking about it, she would probably not be able to make it out, so she quickly changed the subject. It is said that this is the best delicacy in the world. Thank you, Your Majesty, for giving me the honor of tasting it myself. She scooped up a spoonful and put it into her mouth. The rich aroma of meat mixed with the faint aroma of rice made her couldn't help but exclaim, the highest praise for the food. It really melts in your mouth. It's delicious. Xu Qingwan is a big foodie. She has no resistance to delicious food and will not care about her image, only focusing on food. Just after swallowing what was in her mouth, she took another big bite and couldn't help but exclaim in praise. Well, it's worthy of being the best soup in the world. This taste and texture are absolutely amazing. Her generous way of eating astounded everyone present. Li Zhen's eyebrows twitched slightly. Guardshu didn't eat like this before. He was very polite. Not so much to say. Xu Qingwan looked at her, feeling puzzled. She seemed to be enjoying the delicious food and had a good appetite when eating, but why didn't she feel the same way when eating? Could it be that I eat too small bites? Xu Qingwan couldn't help but scoop a little more and put it in her mouth to taste it carefully. It seems to smell even better than before. The prince turned his head and looked at Xu Qingwan. Her cheeks were slightly puffed up, making her heroic face look a little more playful and cute. The lips become more rosy because of the nourishment of the soup, like red cherries covered with dew, making people want to taste it. It is so tender and sweet. Xu Qingwan was only focused on the food and didn't even look at the people around her. She was eating in a relaxed manner. Since she was here, she might as well make the best of it. She put all her previous worries and dissatisfaction behind her. If you like it, you can ask the kitchen to make it for you every day in the future. The prince spoke in a gentle tone, picked up the spoon and took a bite. His appetite was also aroused by Xu Qingwan's eating style. Chapter 25. The melt-in-your-mouth pheasant soup seemed even more delicious than usual. Xu Qingwan was almost choked by the prince's words. She quickly swallowed the food in her mouth and turned to look at the prince. Do it every day? No need. I dare not do it. I cannot afford such a big reward. Do it every day. Do you have a mine at home? Even if you have money, you can't spend it like this. Why are you suddenly pampering me like this? He is not. Is there any conspiracy? Xu Qingwan looked at the prince with eyes full of vigilance. From now on, you will dine with me. The prince listened to Xu Qingwan's thoughts and continued eating without changing his expression, his voice still so gentle and doting. He ate very politely. After taking a bite of food, he would wipe it with a handkerchief. There could not be any soup or oil on his mouth. Those slender fingers lightly grasped the handle of the soup spoon, and only scooped half a spoonful of porridge at a time. When it was almost to her mouth, she would slightly lower her head, slightly open her thin lips, and take the porridge into her mouth. After swallowing, pick up a few vegetables and chew them slowly in your mouth. Xu Qingwan felt that he was probably the most elegant man she had ever seen eating. If she hadn't been so shocked by what the prince said, she would probably have become obsessed with him because of his elegance. Your Majesty, this is not good, right? I am just a guard. How can I have a meal with you, Your Majesty? Is it wrong for you to accompany me for dinner? The prince picked up the handkerchief, wet his mouth with the soup, then turned his head and looked at her. Of course I'm not wronged, but this is against the rules. Xu Qingwan really couldn't understand. She didn't understand why the prince would suddenly treat her like this, flirting and pampering her. What was he trying to do? The setting is that the male protagonist likes the female protagonist, so why did things change after she traveled through time? The prince no longer likes the heroine and actually sets his eyes on her. The prince put down the handkerchief in his hand and looked at Xu Qingwan seriously. His eyes were that damn gentle and doting, and he slowly said, "In the Yun Palace, I am the rule. You are my king's guard, shouldn't you listen to me?" The tone was clearly 3 parts doting and 7 parts domineering. A higher-ranking official can crush a person to death. Faced with such a high level of oppression, Xu Qingwan gave up resistance and focused on saving her life. Of course, I will obey your orders in everything. Xu Qingwan didn't want to confront him head-on. She was afraid that she would not be able to win and get beaten. Regarding the prince's sudden flirting and favor, she decided to find a way to deal with it later. As long as she guarded her heart and was as steady as an old dog, she would let him flirt with her if he wanted to. Now, she just wanted to change the subject and get the prince's attention off of herself. The heroine is the prince's official partner. Sister won't fight with you, and sister won't lose her mind just because you flirt with her. When you fall in love with Xinlingyan, you will naturally stop being like this. The prince had long expected that Xu Qingwan must have agreed reluctantly so quickly, but when he really heard Xu Qingwan's voice, he still felt a little unhappy. He felt that his charm was being despised. Your Majesty, Yang cares about you very much. Chapter 26. Xinlingyan looked at Xu Qingwan in surprise. When did I ever say that I care about the prince? Xu Qingwan didn't even look at Xinlingyan, and continued to smile and said to the prince, she was worried that you might catch a cold and your cough would get worse, so she came to see you. Xu Qingwan put down the chopsticks in her hand, looked up and secretly winked at Xinlingyan. Yang seized the opportunity, first treat his illness, then ask him for help, and then you two will fall in love with each other over time. When the prince heard Xu Qingwan, his mind started to work on him and he was so angry that he gritted his teeth. Xu Qingwan clearly knew that he was not sick, but she still let Xinlingyan get close to her under the pretext of diagnosing her illness. What was her intention? I have given you so many honors and favors, but you don't appreciate it at all and are eager to bring me and Xinlingyan together. Good, that's great. You are really loyal to the master behind you. The smile on the prince's face faded a little, and he said in a cold voice, "It's okay, thank you Miss Xin for your concern." Xinlingyan glanced at Xu Qingwan and realized that Xu Qingwan said this on purpose in order to get the prince to help her. She smiled gently and said to the prince, "Your Highness is too polite. Although I am not an expert in medicine, I have learned pulse diagnosis from Grandpa. If your Highness trusts me, I can give it a try. Medical skills need to be passed down, and also require the accumulation of experience. Xinlingyan has only learned pulse diagnosis from her grandfather, and can only diagnose some simple diseases. When she prescribes medicine, she needs her grandfather to supervise her. So she is not completely modest, but she is actually a little unconfident. No need. The imperial doctors are helpless against my old illness, so I won't bother you, Miss Shin. The prince smiled slightly, seemingly not caring about his illness. Did the imperial physician tell me what the prince's illness is? Xinlingyan frowned and looked at the prince's face generously. When she was examining him, she could also see some symptoms from his appearance. The regent of Prince Yun's mansion is a sickly person. I'm afraid everyone in the entire Shifan country knows it. And after so many years, he still hasn't been cured. Xinlingyan is very curious. This is the instinct of people from medical families. When they encounter difficult and complicated diseases, they always want to figure it out and develop a prescription that can cure it. But apart from seeing a bit of illness on the prince's face, Xinlingyan couldn't see anything else. She felt that it was because of her poor medical skills. Xu Qingwan also tilted her head and looked at the prince, curious about what he would say. In the original plot of the book, the prince kept it a secret from Xinlingyan at first, but later, seeing that Xinlingyan was too persistent and knowing her feelings for him, he asked Xinlingyan to treat him. As a result, after several days of research, Xinlingyan determined that the prince was not sick, but she soon realized that the prince was pretending to be sick and did not expose it. She was so kind and gentle that she won the prince's favor, and he fell more and more in love with her. The people at the imperial hospital couldn't find anything either. I took a lot of medicine, but it just didn't get better. As the prince spoke, he covered his mouth and coughed twice, then began to breathe weakly. Your Highness, although I have not yet completed my apprenticeship, my grandfather once taught me a prescription that can replenish qi and moisten the lungs. I can write it down. The prince ordered someone to boil it and try it. Even if it can't cure the prince's cough, it will alleviate some of the symptoms. Xinlingyan spoke very sincerely. Although she did not take the prince's pulse, from his cough and wheezing, she could tell that he had lung-yin disease, and she could use ordinary prescriptions to relieve the symptoms. The prince couldn't refuse the good intention again. He took a deep breath and said calmly, "Then I'll trouble Miss Shin." After saying this, the prince raised his hand and hooked his fingers. The maid beside him immediately understood and hurried to fetch writing brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. Chapter 27. The prince's cough is really real. What a pity. It would be a waste to boil the medicine. The prince is not sick, so he won't drink it. Xu Qingwan sighed in her heart. A poor person like me doesn't need to feel sorry for the rich. For the prince, there is more money than he can spend. Humph, you know I'm not sick and want to take medicine, so why do you let Xinlingyan get close to me in this way? The prince's eyes were deep and bottomless as he looked at Xu Qingwan silently. He was becoming more and more confused about Guardshu. Xinlingyan was lowering her head to write a prescription, while Xu Qingwan was eating the food seriously. She was a little full, but the silver sprouts were so delicious. Although it looks like a plate of bean sprouts, it is actually stuffed with meat. When you take a bite, you can taste the green and refreshing taste with the aroma of meat. It is simply a paradise for meat eaters. The prince was full, and his eyes were always on Xu Qingwan. Seeing that she ate more than himself, he couldn't help but admire her. Everyone has weaknesses. As long as you grasp the weakness and prescribe the right medicine, you can definitely conquer the person. Xu Qingwan's first weakness is her love of eating. The chef in his Prince Yun's mansion is a world-famous chef, but he is still afraid that he will not be able to capture Xu Qingwan's stomach. Guardshu, if you like this dish of silver sprouts, eat more. The prince's voice was smiling, and the unfathomable look in his eyes faded away. He was as gentle as water, and with a doting face, he picked up a piece of silver sprouts with chopsticks and put it into Xu Qingwan's bowl. He leaned slightly and moved closer to Xu Qingwan. His voice was right next to Xu Qingwan's ear. A strand of his hair fell on Xu Qingwan's shoulder. Xu Qingwan, who was savoring the delicious food in her mouth, was suddenly stunned when she saw the slender hand in front of her, which was as white as ice and as delicate as jade. A faint woody fragrance surrounded Xu Qingwan. Her little heart began to dance wildly again. Why are you suddenly getting so close? Are you polite? My breath is blowing on my sister's face. It's over, my ears must be red, so hot, I have a fever. No, Xu Qingwan, you can't be so weak. How can you be seduced by such a small scene? Hearing Xu Qingwan's voice, the prince's smile deepened. He lowered his eyes to look at his ear, which was so close to him. The round and plump earlobe was indeed as red as a red agate bead. It seems to have magical powers, making people want to reach out and play with it. The prince closed his eyes for a moment and moved his gaze downwards. His female guard's neck turned red. It turned out that his charm was still there. Ahem, thank you, Your Majesty. I am full now. Xu Qingwan slightly moved to the side, quickly put down her chopsticks, then quickly stood up and distanced herself from the man. But the faint woody scent still lingered in her nose. Looking at Xu Qingwan, who was running away from him like a frightened bird, the prince sat up straight, slowly put down his chopsticks, and put away the smile on his face. Since Guardshu has finished his meal, let's leave. The maids next to them had been keeping their heads down, not daring to breathe, but now that they could finally move, they hurried over with their heads down and started working efficiently. Li Jin, who was standing behind, still stood straight and calmly, and glanced at Xu Qingwan. Now it seems that the prince is one-sided and Guardshu has been rejecting the prince. He had seen countless women who took the initiative to approach the prince, but this was the first time he had seen a woman who rejected the prince like this. Guardshu is indeed a different kind of woman. Chapter 28. The prince's eyes were still on Xu Qingwan, which made Xu Qingwan uncomfortable, so she quickly walked to Xinlingyan. Xinlingyan was considering a prescription, holding a pen in one hand and rolling up her sleeve with the other. Her pretty face was full of seriousness and her willow-shaped eyebrows were slightly furrowed. The names of several medicinal herbs were already written on the paper. Xu Qingwan looked down and saw that 2 dosages were not written. It turned out that Xinlingyan was considering the dosage. Ophiopagon japonicus, Radix rehmanii, Rhizoma animarini, these all have the effect of nourishing yin and moistening the lungs and relieving cough. It doesn't matter whether you use more or less, it won't hurt your body. Xu Qingwan knew what Xinlingyan was struggling with. She had not taken the prince's pulse, so she had no idea how much medicine to take. But Xu Qingwan knew that the dosage didn't matter because the prince wouldn't really drink it anyway. And even if you really drink it, it will be fine as long as the dosage does not exceed the maximum dose. 5 cents of Radix Ophiopagones and 3 cents of Rhizoma animarini. Anyone who drinks it will be fine. Xu Qingwan whispered in Xinlingyan's ear. She didn't want the prince to hear. This favor can only be done by Xinlingyan. She is just an assisting person and doesn't want the prince to pay attention to her anymore. Qingqing also knows medicine. Xinlingyan was a little surprised. She didn't expect that Xu Qingwan, who was so good at martial arts, also knew pharmacology. I only know a little bit. Don't worry. It's right to listen to me. Xu Qingwan didn't want to expose her strength in her original world, so she could only hide the fact that she was actually a traditional medicine inheritor. Not only is she proficient in pharmacology, she also knows all kinds of miraculous prescriptions from ancient times. If one day she can no longer stay in the palace, she can open a clinic and become a wealthy woman relying on her inheritance. Of course, this was just a precautionary measure. What she hoped most was to complete the mission as soon as possible and return to the original world. Well, in fact, in Grandpa's prescription, the maximum amount of animarina asphodaloids can be used is 5 cents. Your Majesty's disease is old, so would it be better if the dosage is larger? But if the dosage of animarina asphodaloids is too large, the dosage of other drugs will have to be reduced, and the efficacy will be different. Xinlingyan has not yet graduated. Apart from some simple headaches, fevers, diarrhea and sore throats, she has never diagnosed any illness or prescribed any medicine for anyone alone. This time she was prescribing medicine for the regent and there was no pulse diagnosis, so she was a little hesitant. Don't be nervous. You can only know whether a prescription works after you have tried it. If it doesn't work today, you can adjust it tomorrow. Xu Qingwan leaned close to Xinlingyan's ear and whispered, her voice so low that only the 2 of them could hear it. The prince saw the 2 of them whispering to each other, not knowing what they were talking about, and felt inexplicably unhappy. Why doesn't Xu Qingwan have anything to say at this time? Unable to hear her thoughts or what she was saying, the prince felt that the 2 of them were planning how to poison him. Guardshu, come here. No matter what they are plotting, just pull them to your side. The prince's eyes were somewhat gloomy, and he stared at Xu Qingwan. Xu Qingwan originally wanted to refuse, but seeing his look, she was afraid that he would get angry and cause trouble for her, so she could only agree and walked over obediently. She stood 3 steps away from the prince and bowed. What do you want, prince? Push me to the study. Seeing how obedient she was, the prince felt better and spoke softly. Xu Qingwan agreed and quickly stood behind him, ready to push him to the study. Chapter 29. At this time, Xinlingyan had already written the prescription. She turned around and said respectfully, Your Majesty, the prescription is ready. Please take a look. The prince did not extend his hand, but just glanced at Li Jin. Li Jin walked over, took the prescription, and then held it in front of the prince, holding it in both hands for the prince to look at. No need to look, I trust Miss Shen, tell someone to get the medicine. The prince took a quick look and his expression did not change. No matter what the medicine was, he would not take it, so there was no need to look at it now. When Shen Lingyan was writing the prescription just now, she looked so cautious, as if she really didn't know that he was faking illness. Since this pair of good sisters are acting with him, he will cooperate with them. Li Jin handed the prescription to a maid, and the prince said calmly, "Thank you, Miss Shen." Shen Lingyan smiled and said politely, "I should thank His Majesty. Thank you for taking me in. Miss Shen, there's no need to be so polite. Go back and rest." The prince nodded slightly at Shen Lingyan, then signaled Xu Qingwan to push him away. Xu Qingwan, who was pushing the wheelchair behind her, glanced at Shen Lingyan and her mind raced. At this time, the prince should have taken the initiative to ask for help in finding divine Dr. Shen. Why is he leaving now? No, it seems I have to assist again. The prince sneered in his heart, how can you be sure that I will help you? Xu Qingwan leaned down slightly, moved closer, smiled and whispered, Your Highness, the whereabouts of divine Dr. Shen is unknown, and Miss Shen is unable to sleep or eat. If your Highness does not help, send someone to look for him. Shen Lingyan wanted to speak, but she didn't know how to say it because she had never asked anyone for help before. Seeing that the prince was about to leave, she was even more speechless. Now that she heard Xu Qingwan speaking for her, she felt bad. She couldn't always rely on Xu Qingwan for her own affairs. They met by chance, and Xu Qingwan saved her twice and pleaded for her, giving her a place to stay, which was already a great favor. The smile on her face faded. Thinking of her grandfather's whereabouts, the worry and sadness in her heart once again surfaced on her brows. Her brows were furrowed as if filled with sorrow. She walked forward, stood in front of the prince, and knelt on the ground with a plop. Your Majesty, my family has been practicing medicine for generations and has never made enemies with anyone. My grandfather was a doctor who saved the world, but now his whereabouts are unknown and his life or death is unknown. I am really worried, but I am a weak woman, alone and powerless, and I don't know where to find Grandpa. My daughter asks the prince to help me. As long as you find my grandfather, he will definitely cure your old illness. Your Majesty, please help me. As Shen Lingyan spoke, she recalled the times when her grandfather was still by her side, and she couldn't help but burst into tears. A beautiful face like a lotus, with sadness between the brows and tears sliding down the creamy cheeks, making Xu Qingwan deeply appreciate the beauty of pear blossoms in the rain. She felt distressed when she saw this and couldn't help but sigh. The prince's eyebrows, which were like distant mountains, moved slightly. The two women cooperated very well. He had to admire their acting skills. He looked back and saw that guard Xu looked distressed, with his eyes slightly red. It is indeed a sisterly love. It seems that if I don't agree, guard Xu will cry too. Those servants of the Shen family are really dead. If the Shen family and Xu Qingwan are in cahoots, and they use this method to approach him and insert him into Prince Yun's mansion, isn't the price too high? Chapter 30. The prince couldn't figure it out, but he became more interested in the person behind Xu Qingwan. If I don't interfere in the Shen family's affairs, will the people behind the scenes cause trouble again? The prince changed his mind and thought that if he interfered in the Shen family's affairs, he might be able to find clues about the person behind the scenes. It would be better for him to agree to her and see what tricks Xu Qingwan would come up with. It was the first time that Shen Lingyan asked for help from someone, and also the first time that she cried so miserably in front of so many people. She felt a little embarrassed. She raised her hands to cover her face with her sleeves, lowered her head and secretly wiped away her tears. I've begged you so much and cried so sadly, please agree to it quickly. You want to abuse your wife for a while, but chasing her will only lead to a funeral. The prince was about to agree when he heard Xu Qingwan's inner voice. He took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. Why did he feel like he was being controlled by a female guard? Miss Shen, please get up quickly. I have heard of the reputation of divine Dr. Shen. I am also very sad about your situation. I promise you that I will help you find Mr. Shen. In the capital of my Shifan country, at the feet of the emperor, such a brutal thing happened. It is a disgrace to my government office in the capital. I will definitely order the government office to investigate the matter as soon as possible. So, Miss Shen, there is no need to be polite. Even if Miss Shen doesn't say anything, I will not ignore it. Xinlingyan was moved by these words. The regent she knew before was a cold-blooded, stern, ruthless, incompetent, and decisive person. Now the regent's passionate words made her feel that the regent was actually a kind-hearted prince who cared about his country and the world. With the help of the prince, Xinlingyan felt more confident. She immediately wiped away her tears and kowtowed to the prince to express her gratitude. Thank you, Your Majesty. I, Xinlingyan, will repay your kindness today with gratitude. Miss Shen, your words are too serious. Help her up quickly. The prince stretched out his hand and signaled the maid beside him to help the person up quickly. Although he had no sympathy for Xinlingyan, he was unwilling to see her perform such a great honor to him. Because at this moment, he felt that Xinlingyan seemed to be truly grateful to him, rather than acting out a conspiracy. Xu Qingwan was also very touched. She felt that the author was too cruel to the heroine, and she felt heartbroken because of the abuse. Especially seeing Xinlingyan like this with my own eyes, it was much more shocking than reading those written descriptions. When she was reading the book, when the Shen family suffered a disaster and Xinlingyan was sad and crying, she shed tears along with them. Now, seeing Xinlingyan crying and begging for help, her eyes also became wet. But she held back her tears. As she watched the maid help Xinlingyan up, she gave Xinlingyan a comforting smile. Xinlingyan also stopped crying, slightly raised the corners of her mouth, and gave Xu Qingwan a reassuring look. Then I will not disturb you, Your Majesty. I will take my leave first. Xinlingyan bowed to the prince, who nodded slightly, and she turned and left. Guard Xu. The prince waited for a while, but there was no movement from the person behind him, so he turned around and saw Xu Qingwan smiling at Xinlingyan's back. But at this moment, Xu Qingwan had nothing in mind. The prince couldn't help feeling strange and called out. Xu Qingwan immediately came back to her senses, leaned forward slightly and said respectfully, Yes, Your Majesty, I will push you to the study room right away. Chapter 31. The prince turned around, reached out to adjust the hem of his clothes, and said nothing. The study room in Prince Yun's mansion is where the prince does his work and is also one of the forbidden areas in Prince Yun's mansion. The forbidden areas of Prince Yun's mansion are the prince's study and the hot spring pool Yuhua Palace. It's a bit of an exaggeration to call them forbidden areas. In fact, servants are not allowed to enter and exit at will. Only people designated by the prince can enter and exit. Only the personal bodyguard Li Jin can enter and leave the study at will. No one else is allowed to enter unless summoned. Now, the servants were a little surprised to let Guard Xu enter the study, and they were even more convinced that Guard Xu was favored by the prince. In the study, there are shelves full of books and walls full of calligraphy and paintings. There is a large screen behind the desk, which separates the space behind it, so you can't see what's inside. The prince motioned to Xu Qingwan to push himself behind the desk, then picked up an account book and started flipping through it. Xu Qingwan looked around with a pair of eyes. This study was incomparable to Tingyu Shushuan. There were no treasures in it and it was not luxurious at all. Instead, the room was filled with books, and the entire space was filled with the fragrance of books. Just as Xu Qingwan was sniffing and wondering why the books here had a fragrance, she saw the incense burner emitting wisps of green smoke. A bronze crane-shaped incense burner stood on the other side of the table. Wisps of green smoke curled up, and the smell was coming from the incense burner. She should have thought that for a royal relative like the regent, the room would definitely be filled with aromatherapy. She moved her nose and sniffed carefully. The spice must have cypress added to it, a woody cypress scent. This incense smells quite good. The prince must have this smell. He has been fumigated with this smell all day long, and it has become so delicious. Xu Qingwan had no research on and was not familiar with spices, but because cypress seeds were also a medicinal ingredient, she knew that this spice contained the scent of cypress. The prince looked at the account book for a while, and was surprised to hear these words in his ears. What does it mean to be well marinated? In her eyes, how can I be so disrespectful to the king? This woman has really unique ideas. He stared at the account book, reached out to pick up the pen and wanted to make a note, but found that there was no ink in the inkstone. He turned around and looked at Xu Qingwan, wanting to signal her to grind ink. Xu Qingwan didn't even look at him. She was turning back to admire the screen behind her. The painting on the screen is a landscape in ink and wash, which is very artistic, especially the mountains in the distance, which are shrouded in clouds and mist and appear vaguely, as if there are immortals hidden inside. Guard Xu. The prince's cold voice suddenly sounded, and Xu Qingwan immediately came back to her senses. My lord, what do you want me to do? Xu Qingwan was a little embarrassed when she was caught distracted, but according to the principle that I am not embarrassed, it is others who are embarrassed, she clasped her fists seriously, nodded, and waited respectfully for instructions. It was like nothing had happened. Grind the ink. The prince's deep eyes revealed a bit of tenderness. His eyebrows slightly raised and he glanced at Xu Qingwan. Why didn't I realize before that this female guard was so interesting? She actually looked around his study room casually, as if she had been invited to visit. She had no awareness of being a subordinate at all, and Yang Mo even had to ask him to remind her. Yes, Your Majesty. Xu Qingwan quickly stepped over to the table and lowered her head to grind the ink carefully. Guard Xu, do you like that screen? The prince stared at the account book, his tone calm as usual. Xu Qingwan looked down at the ink in her hand and said casually, I like it. The prince's screen is definitely an ordinary one, especially the painting on it. It's really well painted and has a rich artistic conception. Oh? Guard Xu knows something about painting? Then do you know who painted this picture? The prince picked up the pen and dipped it in some ink, then tilted his head, a smile on his lips, and looked at the person in front of him with unfathomable eyes. Chapter 32. I don't understand, I just think it looks good. Could it be the work of some great artist? The prince blinked and turned back to writing. From the hand of this king. If Guard Xu likes it, I can draw one for you. The prince did not raise his head, his eyes were still on the desk, but from his handsome profile, one could see a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. Moreover, there was a hint of doting in the voice, which made Xu Qingwan dazed. It's really amazing to be handsome. Even the side profile is so charming. This voice really touches my sister's heart. If there was no heroine, my sister would really have done it. This voice made the prince very happy, and he couldn't help but deepen his smile. He stopped writing, raised his head slightly, and looked at the woman in front of him. The tenderness in his eyes was like the faint moonlight, and his voice was sexy and hoarse, every word bewitching Xu Qingwan's heart. Guard Xu, from now on, no matter what you like, you can tell me. I will satisfy you. Even if you want the moon in the sky, I will pick it down for you. The prince stretched out his slender hands like white porcelain and gently grasped Xu Qingwan's fingertips. The curve of his lips was just perfect. It makes him look more gentle, and the affection in his eyes is intoxicating. Xu Qingwan was almost bewitched. However, she still had a trace of rationality and warned herself silently in her heart. Don't be fooled by him, this is just his way of flirting, he can't really like you. I didn't like Xu Qingwan for such a long time, how come he suddenly became so affectionate? It must be a conspiracy. He belongs to Xinlingyan, not to me, not to me. The prince's affectionate eyes flashed, and his gentle expression froze. Before he could react, Xu Qingwan suddenly smiled sweetly and said loudly, Then I want the moon in the sky, can you pick it down, Your Majesty? The prince's eyebrows twitched, and a gloomy look flashed across his eyes. No one had ever dared to disobey him like this. This Guard Xu actually dared to embarrass him in person. If it were in the past, he would have punished her with a stick. But now, he can't, he has to win people over with virtue. Guard Xu. As soon as he opened his mouth, he was interrupted by Xu Qingwan. Xu Qingwan was not stupid. She was afraid that the moody prince would hit her with a stick, so she quickly bowed and apologized, Please forgive me, my prince. I was just joking. How dare I ask you for the moon? He. What's the use of the moon? It's not as good as silver. I won't be fooled by your smooth talk. The prince raised his eyebrows and snorted in his heart. When he admitted his mistake, he smiled very sweetly. If it was a woman who could be conquered with money, I wouldn't have to bother with it. Your Majesty, the butler requests to see you. At this time, Li Jin, who was guarding outside the door, announced loudly to the inside that he seemed to have heard Guard Xu's laughter just now. Guard Xu seldom smiles. Chapter 33. The prince regained his composure, looked towards the door, sat up straight, and said loudly, Come in. The old housekeeper walked in hurriedly from outside, hunched over. She glanced at Guard Xu, but her eyes did not linger on her, as if she did not see her, and whispered to the prince. My lord, I have found some clues about the matter you asked me to investigate. The old butler deliberately paused, looked up at the prince, and said nothing else. The prince immediately understood what he meant, but because Xu Qingwan was beside him, the old butler did not dare to speak directly. "Tell me, what did you find out?" The prince raised his eyes and signaled to the old butler that it was okay. Xu Qingwan knew about the eldest prince's affairs in the palace, and it was she who saved the eldest prince's life. So there is no need to hide this from her. "Yes, your majesty." This time, the old butler took a special look at guard Xu. The prince has never been interested in women, so what's different about this female guard? But soon, the old butler withdrew his gaze and continued respectfully. "I have already made inquiries. There is a person in our mansion who has had contact with people in the palace recently. It was a new servant who came into the mansion last year. His name is Liu Daqin. He asked for leave yesterday to go home, saying that his mother was seriously ill." The old butler paused, his face looking a little annoyed. He was the one who selected this person from outside to enter the palace, so how could he have made a mistake in his judgment? This person has not returned home yet. It seems that he has escaped. The prince listened quietly. He was not surprised at all. In this situation, he had expected that this man would run away, but he didn't expect that he had planned it so early and acted so quickly. Seeing that the prince did not say anything, the old butler bent his waist even lower and continued, "But don't worry, your majesty, I have sent people to Liu Daqin's house to look for him. As long as he is still there, we will definitely bring him back." The prince placed it on the table, tapping it lightly with his slender fingers. His deep eyes were lowered, and he said expressionlessly, "Since he planned it long ago, I'm afraid he is not home anymore." The old butler frowned, and the wrinkles on his face deepened. He was now very worried and regretted that he had chosen the wrong person and caused trouble for the prince. "Send someone to guard around his house and find out his whereabouts. Go ahead and do your work. If you have any news, notify me immediately." The prince did not blame the old butler. He knew that it was not the butler's fault. No matter who recruited the person into the prince's palace and who approved him to go home to visit his relatives, it was all reasonable and no one would have expected that Liu Daqin was a traitor. "Yes, your majesty. I will withdraw first." The old butler left with a sad face. The prince pondered for a moment and called the person outside to come in. "Lijian. I am here." Lijian walked in immediately, lowered his head and waited for instructions. The prince's face was as deep as water, and he said in a calm voice, "Send someone to find Liu Daqin alive." "Yes, your highness." Lijian's sharp eyebrows raised slightly, and his whole body was filled with hostility. "He must catch this traitor and let your highness deal with him." After Lijian left, the prince pondered for a while, then turned to Xu Qingwan and said, "Guard Xu, where do you think Liu Daqin will go?" Although Xu Qingwan saved the eldest prince, this might also be a deliberate move by the person behind Xu Qingwan in order to gain his trust. Xu Qingwan pursed her lips and thought about it carefully. Chapter 34. You ask me, who should I ask? This plot didn't exist originally, and I don't know where Liu Daqin is now. But he definitely won't be at home, waiting for you to catch him. Your highness, if it was really Liu Daqin who did it, he would definitely not wait at home to be caught. He had expected that the matter would be exposed, so he must have planned it long ago, either hiding or escaping from the city. The prince nodded with satisfaction. It seemed that the poisoning of the eldest prince really had nothing to do with Xu Qingwan. He didn't know why, but he felt relieved in his heart. He smiled slightly and said slowly, "Well, Guard Xu's analysis makes sense. I just hope he hasn't escaped from the capital yet. If Liu Daqin cannot be found, then the clue will be lost, and the crime of poisoning the eldest prince will probably be pinned on him. Even if the emperor trusted him, those ministers who opposed him would not give up. Things are getting a little tricky." The prince picked up the folding fan on the table, lowered his head and thought, opened the fan, closed it, and opened it again. Xu Qingwan was also thinking with her head down, how to find Liu Daqin as soon as possible. He was the only witness who could prove the prince's innocence. At this time, Lijian, who had left, hurried back and stood at the door of the study. He knocked on the door anxiously and came in. He stood at the door and said anxiously, "Your Majesty, someone is coming from the palace." The prince's eyebrows moved slightly, he glanced outside the door, then his gaze fell on Lijian, asking him to stay calm. "Who's coming?" Lijian immediately calmed down, bowed his head politely and stood aside, whispering, "It's Xu, he's waiting in the front hall." Xu Qingwan was a little curious. Someone came from the palace, So why did Li Jun seem so anxious and nervous? To the front hall. The prince looked calm, his voice returned to its cold and clear state, and he gave Xu Qingwan an order. Xu Qingwan didn't dare to disobey, and quickly pushed the prince out, unable to help but complain in her heart. This should obviously be Li Jun's job. Why did he insist on making me do it, and why didn't he give my sister extra money? Pushing a grown man like you is tiring, okay? The prince listened to the dissatisfaction of the people behind him, and secretly labeled Xu Qingwan in his heart. In addition to being greedy, she is also greedy for money. Several people soon arrived at the front hall. A short eunuch dressed in brocade was standing in the middle of the floor, looking around. Eunuch Xu. The prince greeted him as he entered the room. Eunuch Xu was a popular figure around the emperor, and the prince was always polite to him. Eunuch Xu immediately came to his senses, turned around, bent over and smiled. He had a round face, red lips and white teeth. Although he was in his 40s, he had no wrinkles at all and looked very kind. But one can tell from his eyes that he is a smooth and worldly wise person. Eunuch Xu did not take advantage of his status to put on airs. He bowed to the prince very respectfully and said, "Oh, prince, I pay my respects to you. May the prince be blessed with good health. No need to be polite, please give Eunuch Xu a seat." The prince stretched out his hand to signal Eunuch Xu to stand up. He still looked frail and spoke in a very soft voice. After he finished speaking, he coughed twice and then began to gasp for breath. Eunuch Xu immediately looked worried, took a step forward, and said nervously, "Thank you, Your Highness. I will not sit down." His round face immediately showed a worried look. He sighed and continued, "My lord, have you caught a cold again? Why is your cough not getting better?" Chapter 35. The prince took a deep breath, waved his hands, his face pale, and said, "Please worry about me, Eunuch Xu. You know, this is an old illness of mine, it's nothing serious. I don't know what it is. Why are you bothering Eunuch Xu to come here in person?" Eunuch Xu paused, rolled his eyes, and said hesitantly, "Your servant, I am following the emperor's order to summon the regent to the palace. Please follow me, Your Majesty." The regent is a close and trusted minister of the Xu kingdom. Without the regent, the Xu kingdom would have changed its name long ago. Even the emperor relies on the regent, so Eunuch Xu dares not offend him. The emperor sent him to invite the regent, so he had to do a good job and not let the regent be dissatisfied with the emperor. The prince had already guessed that it was not a good thing. He was summoned to the palace right after the court session ended. Someone must have tried to impeach him in front of the emperor again. Or it might be that the emperor had some difficult matter that he couldn't handle, so he would send someone to ask him to come. His face was calm, he smiled faintly, and said to Eunuch Xu, "Eunuch Xu is too polite, I will go to the palace now." Eunuch Xu bent his waist, cupped his hands, and smiled, saying with some embarrassment, "In fact, the emperor has no choice. It is the prime minister and others who refuse to leave and insist on asking for an explanation. Thank you for your trouble, Your Majesty." As a servant, he didn't dare to say more, so he could only say this much, as a reminder to the regent. Of course the prince understood what this meant. The prime minister had always been at odds with him, always working against him, and always trying to take power away from him. This must be because they were seizing upon his mistake and forcing the emperor into submission. "Let's go, Eunuch Xu. I understand." The prince waved his hand, his face still calm and expressionless. Xu Qingwan stretched out her hand, ready to push the prince, but the system's voice rang in her head. "System, emergency mission, go to the woods outside the city and rescue people. Is it okay not to go?" Xu Qingwan really wanted to know what the prince was doing in the palace, because Eunuch Xu's attitude really made her curious. And every time she rescued someone, she had to fight, which was very tiring, and she wanted to take a break. "System, no, if you refuse the mission, you will be punished to stay here for 3 more years. Oh my god. Xu Qingwan doesn't want to stay here, not even for another year. However, the prince had already warned her that if she left without his permission, she would be punished. Xu Qingwan had no choice but to walk around to the prince and whispered, "Prince, I have something urgent to do and need to leave for a while." The prince was surprised to hear what she said and looked at her inquiringly. Could it be that guard Xu was unwilling to follow her into the palace? Was she trying to convince herself? It was not until he heard her words that a gleam of light flashed in the prince's eyes, and he seemed to know what was going on. The person behind guard Xu was contacting her again. But he didn't see anyone or anything approaching Xu Qingwan, and how did they talk to each other? The prince's eyes were full of inquiry and sharpness, as if he wanted to see through the woman in front of him. However, he quickly concealed his emotions and gave Xu Qingwan a faint smile, like a spring breeze. He spoke in a deep voice, "Where are you going, guard Xu? You have to accompany me into the palace, and you have to protect me." Chapter 36. The prince's voice was low and sexy, as if he was acting coquettishly to his wife and didn't want her to leave. Xu, who was standing next to him, was so shocked to see the prince like this for the first time that his eyes, which were usually narrowed into a slit, suddenly widened several sizes. Xu had gotten used to the prince's attitude towards guard Xu in the past few days, and he was no longer surprised. He just stood there quietly, pretending that he didn't hear anything. The prince's reaction still made Xu Qingwan stunned for a moment. She was aroused again. This man wants to tease people, and he always succeeds. The prince was secretly delighted. Now that he had seduced her, she should stay with him and not go anywhere else. But guard Xu's mission is top priority, so of course she won't be fooled. Sighing inwardly, she said calmly, "I may have eaten something bad and suddenly have a stomachache. I can't protect the prince. I'll take my leave and go to the toilet first." After saying that, Xu Qingwan covered her stomach and ran away with her teeth bared. Everyone was stunned. Xu blinked his eyes, which were most observant of people's words and expressions. He felt that the female guard seemed to be pretending. Xu was also puzzled. How could guard Xu have a stomachache when he ate the prince's food? Wouldn't the prince also? But the prince doesn't look like he has a stomachache, and it's a bit strange that guard Xu's stomach hurts so suddenly. The prince never expected that the female guard would use such a vulgar excuse. In front of so many men, she said that she wanted to go to the toilet, which was something that even female virtues did not allow. It seems that the place she is going to is very important. Watching the figure running away, the prince put away his smile, his face gradually darkened, and he lowered his voice and said, "Find someone to go and check. If guard Xu is ill, he needs to be treated in time." Due to the presence of Xu, the prince did not directly ask someone to follow Xu Qingwan. These words were given to Xu. There was no need to state them explicitly. Xu knew what the prince meant. Xu nodded and agreed, turned around and left quickly, passed through a corner door, walked to a secluded place, gave a secret signal, and called out a few shadow guards. He whispered a few words to the shadow guards, who nodded. Then he disappeared again, concealing his whereabouts and heading towards his target. Xu hurried back, pushed the prince, and followed Xu out of the Prince Yun's mansion. Xu Qingwan ran all the way to Tingyu. She hid beside the courtyard gate, looked outside, and found no one. There was no one in the courtyard either, so she immediately turned over and jumped onto the wall. With her lightness skill, she jumped onto the roof in a few leaps and then rushed out of the palace. As soon as she left the palace, several figures appeared in the place she had just passed, following her not far away. Xu Qingwan rushed out of the palace and rushed out of the city. In order to save time, she used Qinggong all the way, flying over eaves and walls, and said to the system, "Who do you want me to save? Can you find a suitable time for the next mission?" "Sister, I am a woman, and I also need to save face, okay?" At this time, the system did not show up at all because it was afraid of being unsafe. It only talked to Xu Qingwan in her mind. "System, the person you want to save is Liu Daqin. This is the mission that was just triggered. Don't blame me." "What? Liu Daqin? You want me to save Liu Daqin? Why didn't you say so earlier?" Xu Qingwan gritted her teeth in anger. If she had known that it was to save Liu Daqin, she would have explained it directly to the prince. Maybe the prince would have sent her a few helpers. "System, you didn't ask me, who told you to make such a shameful excuse?" Chapter 37. Xu Qingwan took a deep breath and gritted her teeth and said, "Please explain it to me next time, or I will lie down right now. Go and have fun." The system said indifferently, "Oh, I'm so scared." "Don't forget that you are in a book now. Just lie down and don't go back. You can go now." Xu Qingwan was so angry at the system that she ran away faster and faster. After a few flights, she was out of the city. After leaving the city, she headed straight for the woods in the western suburbs. Although it is broad daylight now, the sky is clear and bright, but the woods in the western suburbs are somewhat dark. The crowns of the towering trees are like giant parasols, completely blocking the sky. Only scattered sunlight filtered through the gaps between the branches and leaves. There were clumps of knee-high wormwood growing on the ground, and any open space was filled with rocks. Deep in the woods, a young man carrying a bag was walking forward in a hurry. He was wearing coarse cloth clothes and a hat on his head. He looked back every 2 steps. There was no wind in the forest and it was a bit stuffy. Because of his nervousness, he sweated a lot. The sweat flowed down his forehead and into the corners of his eyes. He instinctively closed his eyes and raised his hand to wipe the sweat. Crack! Suddenly, the sound of a branch breaking came from behind him on the left, which scared him so much that he shivered all over and turned around nervously to look. About 10 meters away from him, 2 men holding scimitars appeared. The 2 men were sweating profusely and breathing heavily because of the heat on their journey. One of them made eye contact with the young man and immediately revealed a ferocious look. He shouted, "Liu Dacheng! Do you think we won't be able to find you if you don't take the main road?" Another immediately echoed, "Humph, you know how to find a place. This place is the best for action. You can't escape today." Liu Dacheng was so frightened that his legs went limp. He staggered and nearly fell to the ground. He frantically grabbed onto the tree trunk next to him and finally stood up. "Who are you? What do you want to do?" Liu Dacheng was terrified at this moment. He had expected that the other party would kill him to silence him, so he secretly fled the city. He thought that he could hide in the woods and not be easily discovered, but he didn't expect that he would still be found by them. The 2 men ran towards Liu Dacheng, and one of them said with a ferocious look on his face, "Of course we are here to send you off." After the man finished speaking, the scimitar in his hand flew towards Liu Dacheng. Liu Dacheng turned around and ran, but he was so frightened that his legs were weak and he had no strength to run. After running a few steps, he stepped on a stone, stumbled, and fell. The machete hit the tree trunk next to it and embedded itself into it. Liu Dacheng landed face first on the ground, grimacing in pain. Half of his face felt burning. He wanted to get up, but his hands and feet were too weak. He could only use all 4 limbs and crawl forward to escape. Don't waste your energy. Where else can you escape to? We 2 brothers have been searching for you for a long time. Don't waste our energy. We will kill you. The man walked to the big tree, pulled out the scimitar with force, slowed down, and wiped the sweat from his face. The other man didn't run either. He raised his arm to wipe his face, then walked towards Liu Dacheng step by step. This feeling of oppression made Liu Dacheng even more frightened. He was shaking all over, rolling and crawling on the ground, unable to stand up. As he looked at the cold and sinister knife light, his legs began to tremble and tears came out of his eyes. Don't kill me, don't kill me. I have silver. I'll give it all to you. Don't kill me, my 2 brothers. Chapter 38. Liu Dacheng took off the bag on his body, then opened it tremblingly and poured out the white silver inside onto the ground. All of these are for you. 100 taels, all of them. Don't kill me, don't kill me. He knelt on the ground and kowtowed while crying. He was just an ordinary man and was no match for these 2 men. The scimitar almost hit his neck. He regretted it. He didn't want to die. Money was not as important as life. The 2 men showed sarcastic smiles on their faces and looked at Liu Dacheng with contempt. The taller one among them said, "Your life is worth more than just 100 taels. The people who wanted to kill you gave us 300 taels. If we kill you, your 100 taels will also be ours." The other shorter one laughed and said, "Har har, don't waste your time on him, big brother, let me do it." He gripped the scimitar tightly in his hand and walked forward step by step. They are killers, and usually they specialize in killing people to silence them. But before they take action, when they meet someone who is scared to death, they like to admire the person's expression. At this moment, Liu Dacheng's expression made them feel very exciting. Liu Dacheng was completely hopeless. He used all his strength to retreat, muttering, "Don't kill me. Don't kill me. I won't say anything. He, only the dead won't speak. You are worth 400 taels, what a good deal." The short man smiled perversely. He kicked the silver on the ground aside, stared at the trembling Liu Dacheng with teasing eyes, and slowly raised his scimitar. It was the first time he had seen someone lying on the ground, waiting to die. "Hello." Suddenly, a woman's voice came from the tree above his head. The short man frowned and raised his head with a fierce look. On a 2-story high tree, a woman in tight clothes stood on a branch, holding a long sword in her hand that emitted a cold white light. The person who came was Xu Qingwan. She rushed all the way and found something wrong when she entered the woods. She used her lightness skills to fly into the air and look down from above. She soon discovered the three people. When she arrived, she saw the short man raising the scimitar, but the short man and his older brother didn't even notice her. She concluded that the two men's kung fu was average, and at least in front of her, Xu Qingwan, they were just younger brothers and not to be feared. So she was not in a hurry. After speaking out to stop the short man, she still stood on the treetop. "Where did you come from, little girl? Stop meddling in other people's business." The short man raised his head with a ferocious expression and glared at the person on the tree, as if he wanted to glare the person away. Xu Qingwan would not be intimidated by his aura. She pointed the tip of her sword at the short man and shouted, "This man's life is mine. Let him go and you can go. Otherwise, both of you will just become dead people who can't speak." The muscles on the tall man's face twitched twice. When they were doing this job, they also encountered people blocking the road, but they had never encountered someone who saw injustice and drew his sword to help, and she was a woman at that. The tall man saw that the woman was thin and stood up high without coming down, so he suspected that the woman was bluffing and might only have light skills. Chapter 39. How dare you say such arrogant words? Today, I have two brothers and I don't mind killing one more. The short man also gained confidence, and immediately smiled viciously, saying, 400 taels, killing two is not a loss, big brother, do it. The short man was closest to Liu Daqin. He took 2 steps forward and arrived in front of Liu Daqin. He raised the scimitar in his hand, and with one swing he could kill Liu Daqin with his head. Liu Daqin was so frightened that he wanted to run, but he had no strength left. His hands and feet were trembling as he begged for mercy. "Spare me, don't kill me. I didn't want to kill anything, tsk." Xu Qingwan curled her lips helplessly, and with a slight movement of her wrist, the Qingfeng sword in her hand flew out. There was a flash of silver light, and the long sword pierced directly into the short man's wrist with a sound of breaking through the air. "Arr!" The short man screamed, and the scimitar in his hand fell to the ground with a clang, and then blood gushed out from his wrist. The short man immediately grabbed his wrist with his other hand, staggered back and screamed, his expression filled with fear, resentment, and murderous intent. "You little girl, you're looking for death." The tall man saw his brother was seriously injured, and walked forward angrily with a scimitar in his hand. At this moment, Xu Qingwan had already fallen from the tree. She stretched out her hand and grasped the hilt of the Qingfeng sword, then swung the sword towards the tall man. "You are looking for death," Xu Qingwan said in a deep voice, and her hands moved faster. The tall man's scimitar collided with her Qingfeng sword, making a ping-pong sound and even producing sparks. However, although the tall man was sturdy and much stronger than Xu Qingwan, his kung fu was far inferior to Xu Qingwan. After a few moves, the scimitar in his hand slipped out of his hand and flew to the side. With a bang, it embedded itself into the tree trunk. Xu Qingwan placed the tip of her sword against the tall man's throat. She smiled and said calmly, "Tell me, who sent you here?" The two tall brothers take money from people and help them get rid of disasters. Their rule is that they cannot disclose the information of their employers. Leaking information is worse than death. But the tall man didn't want to die like this, he felt he could still struggle. He immediately spread his hands with a cowardly look on his face and begged for mercy, "Lady, please let us two brothers go. We promise not to appear in front of you again. Please spare my life, aunt." Xu Qingwan sneered and said, "Hey, it's too late to call me aunt at this time. Tell me who sent you here, or my Qingfeng sword will have to taste blood." The short man did not run away at this time. He endured the severe pain, gritted his teeth, and looked around. Could this woman have help? If a woman saw injustice, why would she ask who sent them? Were they ambushed? The tall man's nerves were tense. He tried to pretend to be calm, but the muscles on his face betrayed his nervousness and he twitched from time to time. His eyes were alert, staring at the sword that was strangling his throat. "Girl, I advise you not to ask. This matter has nothing to do with you. You can't afford to offend someone who wants his life." Chapter 40. If you want to live, you should let us brothers go. If you kill both of us brothers, you will not live either. The tall man thought that Xu Qingwan would be afraid of his threat, but he didn't expect that the woman in front of him suddenly curled her lips and laughed contemptuously. "Hey, I'm so scared. Who is the person behind you? Tell me, I want to see if he is really that powerful." The short man on the other side had torn his clothes into pieces, wrapped his wrists together, and bandaged his wounds with his teeth. His face was as pale as paper, and beads of sweat the size of beans rolled down his forehead. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a scimitar drop to the side. It was his scimitar. He must rescue his eldest brother. The two brothers must go back alive together. He gritted his teeth, endured the severe pain, and rushed towards the scimitar. Xu Qingwan caught a glimpse of his movements from the corner of her eye, a sharp look flashed across her eyes, and she reached out and pulled the tall man in front of her to her front. The tall man's burly figure blocked her completely, and her Qingfeng's sword was changed to be horizontal across the tall man's neck. She said loudly, "You'd better be careful. If I move even a little, his throat will be cut." Sure enough, the short man didn't dare to move. He stood frozen in place, holding the scimitar in his intact left hand, staring at Xu Qingwan with a ferocious and resentful expression. "If you let my eldest brother go, we promise not to embarrass you again. And Liu Dacheng, we won't cause him any more trouble." They didn't want to die. They were about to get the 400 taels, but they didn't expect that they would die without spending it. Now, as long as they could leave alive, they would have a chance to take revenge in the future. Xu Qingwan sighed and shook her head. "Oh, don't waste your breath, I'm not that easy to fool. If you don't tell me who is behind this, I will send your brother to see the king of hell right away." Although she said threatening words, Xu Qingwan's expression was very calm, with the corners of her mouth slightly raised, as if she was teasing someone. Only her sudden tightening of her hands showed that she was really threatening. Don't kill my brother. I'll tell you. Xu Qingwan frowned slightly. Is he so easy to confess? I thought it would take some blood to win. Tell me, who sent you here? The short man said timidly, "It was a man who contacted us. He was wearing a veil and his face could not be seen. We didn't know who he was." The sword in Xu Qingwan's hand moved slightly, and the tall man felt a pain in his neck, with a line of blood spurting out. "You're lying. Didn't you say the person behind this is very powerful and would want to kill me? How could you not know who he is?" The short man's expression froze, but he quickly said in a flattering manner, I really don't know who he is, but he is very generous and well dressed, so he is definitely not an ordinary person." Xu Qingwan fell into deep thought. What this person said was possible. If they really didn't know who they were, there was no point in killing them. It would be better to take them back and hand them over to the prince. This might help clear the prince of suspicion, but is it necessary for me to get involved in this matter? My mission is to save people. She doesn't need to interfere in other matters, right? The prince's attitude towards her has completely changed 180 degrees in the past 2 days. Regardless of his purpose, he is very nice to her. What if the prince was really just being nice to her and had no conspiracy? Then taking these two people back with her would be considered repaying the prince's favor. Okay, in that case, both of you come with me. The short man and the tall man were both shocked. They wanted to live, but they didn't want to go to jail. The short man said cautiously, "Auntie, where are you taking us? Please spare us. Just treat us as shit and let us go." Xu Qingwan was indeed disgusted, but she still held back and said unhappily, "Stop talking nonsense. Follow me."